Gregor Schill in the number 89. Not seen too much of Schill in this morning's stint so far, so maybe being reserved a little bit towards the end of the race. Of course, Maximilian Frank, he also did a full service, mirrored the sister BMW ahead of them down the lane. Maximilian Frank still remains in the Team Nitro car. Van der Velde handing over to Fiala on their full service. Of course, Van der Velde did an old splash and dash just to try and keep them in contention. Dylan Tan back into the car for the number 4. I say, surprised we've seen Dylan Tan again on that one. He's been in the majority of the morning so far. Jonathan Riley makes an appearance in the Ferrari, giving over from Chris Hartveld there. And of course, Sean Arnold, we've already seen alongside Valentin Goppel in their fight for P8. And of course, Hubert Szymanski back into the Coach Dave Academy car, and of course Castorino giving that one over. It's a bit of a false picture almost, isn't it, Ewan? You know, we've been watching all morning, and we've seen drivers multiple times appearing in these cars as it looks like the 201 is giving some pressure to Gregor Schill as they head up towards the other side of the Adenauer Forst, stepping on the brakes nice and hard, everybody checking up. It's a bit of a false economy, isn't it? We've seen a lot of drivers circulating around in these cars. We've seen multiple names appearing, you know, one after another, and of course with the limited drive time between all the drivers in the lineup, we almost think that we've seen this driver far too much, when in reality, of course, with the weather, it's cutting these stints, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes short at a time. So although we're cycling through lots of drivers, these guys aren't getting in that full, you know, 60, 65 minute stint that is, of course, hard set in the rules.
Yes, very difficult. And this is, of course, that rule is in line with the real life IGTC rules for the most part anyway. But I say around this circuit, it does really limit you in terms of how many laps you can do. I think generally these GT3s can do 8 laps on fuel, but that would of course take more than 65 minutes, which proves to be the problem as Jordan Sherritt comes in to serve his penalty. It's the first one we've really seen from Jordan Sherritt here today, and indeed 255 competition since sunrise haven't put a foot wrong really. They've increased their lead by over a minute, but all this penalty has effectively done is taken away the gains of the last 6 hours. Now that might sound like it's an extremely demoralising thing to have happen, but actually when you consider that they're just going to have their lead slashed from 3 minutes to 2, you start to realise actually this is not going to affect them greatly. It is just going to be a very small setback for them. After they've served this penalty, they will still be a long way in front.
Yeah, absolutely so. I mean, you know, stop go 30 sounds like a detrimental thing, and of course across a 1 hour sprint race would certainly set you back some considerable margin against your opponents. But of course, when we've been racing here nearly now coming up to the 21 hour mark, I think, if my maths is correct at this time of the day, 21 hours of racing, and you know, 3 minutes ahead, it just proves how kind of dominant they've been over the course of the race so far, especially when you consider from Friday they actually had a qualifying ban and started from P42. So 43 cars qualified, 41 made the grid, and they've come back from dead last pretty much alongside the number 89 car that we're seeing on the screen at the moment, the BS competition entry. They've both come from the back of the grid. So, you know, the number 40 car that's up there at the moment, they qualified P6, and they're still mingling in the top 3 positions. But to come from the back of the grid in, you know, in an esports race as well, Ewan, you've got to bear in mind, of course, the talent levels here are so much higher than what we would see, you know, in a public lobby. Probably, you know, on a bad day in a public lobby, me or you could probably do the old last to first trick and somehow come out on top. But to do that here, that's a considerable feat. Especially, you know, with all the outfits that they've had to cross to get up here. Of course, we're only 28 cars now circulating from the 41 that started, but you know, they had to do some serious work to get by.
Yep, absolutely. Even if some of those positions will have come for free, they've still got to be there to get them. Meanwhile, Szymanski is catching Valentin Goppel at the moment for 9th position. It is still the leading car in silver now, the number 28 Ford Mustang. And as things stand, they're on their way to a championship. The only way they can be denied is if the BF Racing Esports number 17 actually gets through and overtakes them here. And that, at the moment, is looking pretty unlikely. The more this race continues to unfold, with just over 3 hours to go, it's looking like an inspired call to wait it out as long as possible on those wet weather tyres, then come into the pit lane when you know, on the normal hour-long stint, after the normal hour-long stint, and then put dry tyres on, even though it was still raining, knowing that the rain would soon stop, the track would soon dry, and it's looking like that has bought them 55 seconds, a gap that at this stage in the race, this late stage in the race, may be enough to for them to bring it all the way home. They'd need to lose 20 seconds an hour to the team behind them if they were to lose the lead from here, and that's about 3 seconds a lap almost. So they would need to lose a lot of time to lose on pure speed, but as we said earlier, we don't expect that last rain shower to be the last, and so there are more chances to gain and lose in this game of snakes and ladders in the silver category. And of course, people were handing the 201 the win earlier on, and look what's happened to them. So you just never know.
Yeah, you just never know, indeed. And, you know, that's the magic, isn't it, of endurance racing. It's why it's one of my, you know, favourite forms of motorsport, both virtually and, of course, in the real world. You just never know what is going to happen. Of course, cast your mind back a few years at Le Mans, Toyota breaking down on the line before the race even ended. You know, the heartbreak at 23.5 hours to, you know, kind of get to that stage. It's, you know, destroying, but again, nobody saw it coming, and that's the kind of magic of it. Just as you think, you know, the championship's wrapped up, we've been, you know, harping on all day about the number 86 Team MSI, how they've wrapped up the season already before they got here. So their DNF today doesn't affect their championship standings. They're still going to walk away SRO champions in Pro. But alternatively, when you look at the silver category, of course, we've been speaking, you know, all of yesterday into the night, all of, you know, the majority of this morning when myself and Ewan obviously came into the booth. We've been speaking about the 201, how dominant they are, how they're mixing it in with the pro categories, and then all of a sudden the rug's been kind of pulled out from underneath their feet. Just as you think it's all kind of signed, sealed and delivered, all they've got to do is nurse the car home. It turns on its head once again. And like you say, the 28 looking relatively untouchable. But again, never say never here, because you've seen the 201 fall out of contention. Fingers crossed the 28 doesn't suffer the same fate in these late stages.
Don't forget as well that disconnections actually cost you more around the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and I know that's going to sound quite odd to say, but I believe it to be true. On a normal circuit, let's say 2 minutes in a lap time, you could be 1 minute 50 away the round, and then disconnect, and then have to do that lap all over again, effectively losing yourself 1 minute 50 seconds plus the amount of time it takes for you to reconnect and get back onto the circuit again. But when you're on the Nordschleife, I'm not sure what point the circuit the 201 actually was, but you could be 8 minutes, nearly 7 minutes around a lap, and then disconnect. Then you put back to the pit lane, then you've got to reconnect, then you've got to do those 7 minutes again before you can continue on your progress. So it actually can cost you more around the Nürburgring Nordschleife than it would on any other circuit. I'm not saying that on another circuit, more normal length, they would have retained the lead, because that isn't true. I don't believe that's true. However, they may have lost less time and, you know, have been able to salvage something. But a real shame for the number 201, who are still in this race, and they're still trying to catch the Visceral Esports Lamborghini as well. If they can do that, they'd rescue third in the championship. At the moment, they're 30 seconds away from doing so, in so doing, passing that fifth placed Silver Cup car.
It's going to be a big ask, isn't it, for the 201 to gain anything in this late stages. But again, never say never. Of course, Kevin today in the number 44, down in P16, leading, of course, like you say, 30 seconds to the good over the 201. And, you know, like you say, it's one of those tracks, isn't it, where, like, you know, 7-8 minutes into a lap, you have your connection kind of pulled out of the out of the server, and you've got to rejoin, wait for the controls to unlock before you can get back on your way. Whereas, somewhere, say Brands Hatch, maybe 1 minute 30, 1 minute 40 GP lap possibly on that one. Of course, you have the the plug pulled out there. You're not losing a huge amount. Okay, you lose physical lap numbers more than time, but it's easier to gain that back because you're still relatively within reach. Whereas, if you have the rug pulled out at Dossingerher, you're screwed. You're all the way back to the start of the previous lap, and you've got no chance of even coming back into this one. So it's a big ask for the Gladius guys, but they're not giving up. They're still kind of going on, much like the 63 Lamborghini, again, admiring lots of kind of grit and determination in the field at the moment. And like we said earlier on in the broadcast, if you've made it this far, no matter what happens, you may as well just, see it out to the end, because you never know what's going to happen come the checkered flag.
No, certainly don't. We've come back to watch Maximilian Frank here, by the way, in 4th place, because he is being caught by the likes of Wojciech Fiala and by Dylan Tan as well, who is very close to the back of the Williams Esports car. Szymanski is also close to Goppelt again here, 1.2 seconds between those two. So there's some battles re-emerging here now, and that's pretty encouraging to see. There was a stage about an hour or two ago where actually maybe close to an hour ago, the gaps were all over 10 seconds, but that has very much gone away now, and we've got some closer moments out on the circuit. Szymanski at the closest of them, just 1.2 seconds behind Valentin Goppelt. You can't imagine that the silver car will put up any resistance here to the Ferrari, but it's worth watching nevertheless. Goppelt will want this overtake to happen as pain-free and as easily as possible, because they don't want to lose any time to the people they're really racing, starting from 11th place with Jacques Olivier.
Yeah, it's thinking of that bigger picture, isn't it? Again, that word that we've been saying a lot more. It's not going to affect Goppelt at all if he just lets Szymanski go. Just needs to kind of pull over, of course, and gift the 38 the space on the track, and then can follow in the wake, maybe even using it to his advantage in a bit of a slipstream scenario. And the Ferrari of Szymanski there really pushing as they came out of Hoheneichen towards, of course, the Flugplatz section, where the Mustang, in theory, should be able to pull out the lead slightly more using the grunt of the high revving V8 engine towards Schwedenkreuz they go. And we should see the Ferrari coming back into this fight once again when they get nearer to the kind of middle section towards kind of a siphon down towards Exmüller, before we see the climb up through Kesselchen. The Mustang will propel itself forward a bit more, and then Szymanski should come back into it in the final sector of the lap. So it's one big game of cat and mouse here at the Nürburgring, and if you're racing it kind of for the first time, don't be too disheartened if you see your rival pulling away in one sector, because by the next 2 sectors you may be all over the back of him once again in order to take that position. So different cars, different manufacturers, of course, have different strengths and weaknesses within ACC, so it's crucial that you kind of understand that in the journey into the endurance racing calendar, and maybe even into the sprint race, depending if you're taking it on solo or not. But Goppelt still not putting a foot wrong this lap so far, keeping it relatively tidy through Adenauer Forst and up the other side through the foxhole. Of course, the gap is down to under a second as these guys got to Arenberg. So Szymanski certainly gaining, but small margins again, Ewan, and we keep saying that a lot today. It's tit for tat everywhere. It's 1 or 2 seconds gained here, 1 or 2 seconds lost somewhere else, and nothing's really kind of progressing towards each other at the moment. Everybody's just almost in hot lap mode, aren't they? Just trying to drill in these consistent fast lap times to try to get near their next opponent.
And well, we can see an actual gap between first and second for the first time in ages. 2 minutes 11 now, as opposed to 3 minutes 12, which is the most it has been pretty much all day. This is Jacques Olivier, who is also closing on Goppelt and Szymanski, but is a long way behind. 21 seconds back to Cardinale, who I thought was under a lot of pressure from the 17 BF Racing Esports team at one stage, but that's changed throughout the pit stop cycle as well. So Ramonnet is a lot further back now, and we will see if if he gets anywhere near Bastian Richter, but that's not going to happen. He's miles behind him. Well, looks things at the moment. Richter's 2.3 behind Cardinale. Battling for 12th place, so that's only overall. So not too much to speak of there. But, class position battles, they're few and far between. It's more about the overall positions that people are fighting for now, like the one in 9th place, like the one in 12th. This one not too far away in 19th as well. Sabarov in the only Audi in the field is being caught by Santama, the 224. It is only overall positions being fought over at the moment. Szymanski loses another bit of time. Goppo somehow is bringing gap down to Arnold, or at least did that last time round. What that generally suggests is that Szymanski is not quite as quick as Sean Arnold here, and so a battle for 8th place in Pro doesn't look to be on the horizon anytime soon. The McLaren looks comfortably clear for the moment.
Yeah, Szymanski there losing out a little bit in the last sector gate. It's up to a second. Of course, it was under a second, I think, at the start-finish line. Of course, waiting for the next gate to appear, and that will be the start-finish line as they all come through sector 3 on that one. So, you know, not as quick as maybe we thought Szymanski, and we saw it earlier on, didn't we, battling, I think it's with the 276 Aston, if I'm not mistaken, trying to get past those guys and just trying to find a way through to try and drive away. And it just kind of seemed that kind of tit for tat area again, didn't it, where we couldn't really call either car was, you know, either car was better than the other, and both cars had their strengths and weaknesses across a lap at the time. But the 17 on your screen at the moment, of course, championship leaders coming into this round, but they're still going to have to climb a few more places up yet if they do want to try and have a shot at that title. Cardinale, of course, the next car on the road, although they're a considerable way off the back of them. Cardinale, just for reference, is coming up to her act just after the carousel, so it's going to be a big ask for the BF Racing Esports crew. I mean, they're going to have to pray for the downfall, aren't they, of the 258. We've seen Baumann, when he's been in the car, been a bit of a loose cannon almost in his driving style, kind of sliding the car everywhere, really working for the grip of that Porsche. And we've not seen Pisano this morning either. So again, if they have a driver change, could it be a pace difference enough to bring the BF Racing camp back into the race for the title?
It's be getting pretty desperate for them now. 2 hours 50 remaining, and they will be really hoping that something happens up ahead here for them to be brought back into the game. I was talking earlier on actually about the number 717 Team Nitro BMW being under a bit of pressure maybe in the next few minutes because of some close gaps from 4th place now, closest we've seen in the last 6 hours. However, a new personal best for Maximilian Frank last time round, an 8:07.5, the fastest lap time of anybody last time round, puts him a further 2 seconds ahead of Wojciech Fiala, and 4 seconds ahead, further 4 seconds ahead of Tan, who was did an 8 in the 8:11s. So not good for the two Mercedes, but BMW looking to hang on to 4th place. That's very good news indeed. And that position changing hands seemingly a very long way away now. Cardinale is caught, or being caught by Richter. I'm not sure which way around it is. I think Richter has just gotten through on Cardinale there. And so as those two crossed the last timing loop, they were only a couple of tenths apart, but in reality there'll be many tenths apart very shortly. Bastian Richter looks a lot quicker than the Silver Cup driver. He'll try and catch the next 25 or so seconds to Olivier, and then try and catch Szymanski as well, I suppose, but that's going to be pretty tricky as we go back to the 201 that disconnected earlier on in the race. Looking to recover 3rd in the championship. Even that is becoming pretty difficult as Kevin Tadej in the 44 hangs on to position, and here's Jordan Sherritt over the line, side by side with somebody. One of the Ferraris is putting a lap down here. Speaking of which, the number of teams a lap down has gone up Oh, sorry, it's gone down recently. There's now 12 cars on the lead lap, as opposed to about 8 or 9 as they were earlier on. That stop and go 30 has brought a lot more people back onto the lead lap again.
Good in a way, of course. Lots more people on the lead lap, of course, gives them a bit of a sense of hope. It's actually the other way round that we're watching at the moment. The 255 has had a lap taken off them by the number 72. So the 72 has unlapped themselves coming down the Dottinger. It was Scherer leading Richter as they came towards the Bilstein Bridge, and that has somehow switched hands when we've got onto the GP Strecker. So again, the 72 wants to try and make up something towards the end of this race, of course, after starting so strongly, qualifying, of course, on pole in yesterday's Friday's qualifying. Now, actually, we're into Sunday on this race, and qualifying Friday on pole, trading with the Williams car. I had in my notes that the 5 and the 72 could be the 2 cars to keep your eye on, but of course the number 5 in P5 currently, and the number 72 in P12, and it's a bit of a dark horse race, isn't it? I don't think nobody could predict the 255 doing as well as they did from the back of the grid, and alongside as well the BS competition coming all the way from the back of the grid. But not to discredit the 717, they started P16, so they've made some good gains in the early stages. The number 4 Mercedes qualified P4 as well on that one, so they've lost a few places. The number 51 Ferrari Esports entry, they were on the second row of the grid in P3. So although the qualifying, we always say qualifying isn't as important in endurance racing, it can be to a degree, because it does keep you out of the clutches and all the accidents and incidents that go along the way as well. And it's a key thing, isn't it, at the Nordschleife, is to get around all the chaos at the start, the turn 1 pinch point that always happens with the switchback nature into 2, of course, the right-left sequence, rather than heading out into the Mercedes arena. It's quite a tight first opening lap, and we did see on the highlight reel everybody somehow getting through turns 1 and 2 relatively clean, a little bit of elbows out in the mid-pack, but nevertheless everybody making their way out onto the Nordschleife successfully. A bit kicked off, I think, at the first chicane as we got near the Nordschleife entrance, and then of course the big one as we got down towards Ex-Muller with the number 63 Lamborghini. But relatively all in all, I would say it's been a relatively calm race, should we say. We've seen a bit of elbows out from everybody across the field. Stewards have had to hand out a few penalties in race control, but nothing too serious. We've seen one big one. I think the night was relatively relatively kind of phasing as well. A big high rate of attrition though, through kind of disconnects and problems across various teams. I've got in my notes the number 45 Visceral car crashing out at some point during the night as well. The 86 of course suffering that disconnect, but no real harm because they're of course already championship leaders. First insight into the cockpit, I would say, there of Hubert Szymanski, and if we're keeping a tally between myself and you, Ewan, of course another ultra wide looks to be on that rig.
Yep, tot another one up. There's been quite a few in the sim racing world these days. There are quite a few. This is the closest battle on the circuit though, which is why we've come to watch it. Goppert versus Szymanski. Ferrari cruised up to the back of the Ford without too many problems actually, but ever since then has been struggling a little bit to really get anywhere. So we'll see how he can maybe manufacture a move on this occasion. It's of course running in 9th place in the Pro class behind the Silver class leader. Those being of course the two classes we have in this series. You mentioned the 45 Visceral Esports Lamborghini. Don't forget that there are 2 of those Visceral Lamborghinis, or there were 2 in this race. The 44 is still going and is still running in 5th position in the Silver class, 32 seconds ahead of the number 201. So Visceral do still have one bullet in the gun, and that is the car that's currently challenging for the championship at the start of the day, but now it's just fighting for 3rd place with the Gladius Competitions 201. So that will be a championship battle for position if indeed it materialises. At the moment looking unlikely, nearly 33 seconds apart. And of course, you mentioned the lack of penalties overnight. There have been, or there was, a run of 8 hours and 3/4 without any penalties earlier on, from 2 o'clock in the morning to about quarter to 11 this morning. That's UK time, of course. So 3 o'clock in Europe to quarter to midday. And so that was a very long, clean part of the race with no real issues. Only crashes sort of alone with driver versus circuit sort of incidents. That's the word I was looking for there. And so that's kept the stewards quite quiet, which has been a good thing. Szymanski close again though, through the carousel they go, and the Mustang is going to have to use all of its straight line speed here to hold the Ferrari back, but I believe it will have enough to hang on to this position.
Yeah, through Galgenkopf they go. Of course, the Mustang punching a big hole in the air for that low-slung Ferrari. You can see Szymanski, bottom right-hand side of your screen, really working the steering wheel, feeling the grip through Galgenkopf, and it's incredible how close these drivers get to the white line in the midpoint of the corner. I always think one of them is going to dip a wheel at some point and throw themselves off to driver's left, but it hasn't happened yet that we've witnessed during our stint. And Szymanski using the hole that the Mustang is punching in the air very nicely, although struggling to tow up to the back of it. Under the Bilstein Bridge they go, side by side towards Tiergarten. Surely Goppout's going to yield, and he does. He backs out the throttle ever so slightly. Szymanski goes ahead, standing on the anchors for Tiergarten. Both drivers pulling up in time for the right-hander, and they will trade positions. Szymanski up into P9 overall, and Goppout down into P10. But once again, it's a pro on a silver fight, so again, it doesn't affect the championship scoring for either car. It's just for kind of overall honours at this point. And Goppout thinking of the bigger picture, 2 hours 40 to go, thinking, I don't need to get involved with the Coach Dave Academy number 38. I'm quite happy in the lead of silver. On you go. Let's work together on this one, and maybe the Ferrari can do a return favour and punch a hole in the air for that Mustang as well.
I'm not sure the next time they get onto a straight, really, that the Ferrari's going to be close to the Mustang to be punching a hole in the air, but let's wait and see. It's going to be about Szymanski now trying to catch up to Sean Arnold, who's in 8th place, and that would be a class position changing hands. 9.5 seconds, that current gap between the two. That was our closest battle on the circuit. That's now completed. Of absolutely no interest to ST Racing Esports. 2 hours 40 remaining in the race, and that doesn't sound like a lot when you put it in the context of a 24-hour race. However, it is realistically, it is quite a long time. So anything can happen in these final moments. Gordon Sherritt is still leading for 255 competition. Get back out to 2 minutes 15 with Valentin Goppout still leading in the silver class by 50 seconds to Jack Oliver at the moment. I wonder, he is being caught now, 48 seconds I should say, but I wonder how much everyone will be looking back to that last call that they made when the rain was starting to just ease off a little bit, and they made the inspired call to put on the dry tyres because they knew that the rain would be stopping, and they knew that putting on another set of wets, or indeed leaving on the wets, would result in an extra pit stop being made for the Ford Mustang team. But they went and put dries on for a wet circuit. Goppout dealt with it for the first lap and a bit, even while he was being caught by Jacques Olivier, as we saw at the time. And in the end, it's given them a huge advantage. It was nearly a minute when the advantage has sorted itself out finally. It's down to 48 seconds now, but gaps like that are so difficult to close in this amount of time on pure speed.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. It was an inspired move, as you said, Ewan. It's, you know, something that you wouldn't dream of doing in the kind of real world, let's say, but certainly with the virtual world, of course, you can afford to take bigger risks such as that. And Goppout, of course, navigating around a wet circuit on dry tyres, not ideal, but it has come back to them because, again, they've avoided that trip down pit lane. And as I said earlier, the more time you can spend circulating around rather than trundling in and out of the pit lane, the better, because you're going to cover greater distance in the long run. And that's exactly what endurance racing is all about. Just looking to the weather forecast, a stark change in the weather. It's not rain. I hear you scream from home. It's actually the sun is beginning to peep out from behind the clouds. It's a mixed cloudy sun at the moment, it seems, and the sun is trying to break through in the sky, and that's going to be here for the next half an hour or so. Track conditions, of course, are still optimum. 24 degrees in the air, 30 degrees down on the track, so heating up very nicely, and it does look rather grey over the Dottingerhöhe at the moment, but in the next few minutes or so, hopefully that should come back out, and I'm sure Dynamic going to be scrabbling for the camera so he can get some pictures that aren't either at night or in the pouring down rain here, and really show the beautiful wonders of ACC.
It's a surprise of the day that the sun's going to be shining on the circuit, at least in part. So we have a look at Arenberg here. This is a view as to just how much sun there is, not much, but hoping that it does clear away and we can have some sunlight for the finish. It'd be nice. There's another view onto the front straight of Gregor Schill, who's pulling away from Maximilian Frank. That's been happening for some time now, of course. The gap is 45 seconds up to Murphy ahead. That's come down, in fairness, but the gap to Frank has got up to about a minute now. So not only in that moment, a couple of hours into our stint here, where the gap went from basically nothing to 30 seconds, it's doubled from there now as well. In the last 5 hours, it's doubled. So that's not a great view as to how Team Nitro's race has been going in the BMW. Do wonder what the rest of this race has in store in terms of pit lane now. Are we going to see any more wet weather tyres? And if we don't, I do wonder how they're going to get to the end of the race from here, because everybody is going to have at least 3 more stops or I would say 3 stops remaining in this race. To be honest, they can't be too far away from making their next scheduled pit stops, and though, as you note, we're not quite at the hour yet, so that means that surely some splashes and dashes in that final hour will be required.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you there. Just looking towards stint timers up and down the field. Race leader Jordan Sharrett, of course, served the stop go at 30, and it doesn't, of course, affect the stint timer. That has no effect when you come back out of the pit lane. The stint timer remains as it was when you entered. He's got 26 minutes left of his time, just beginning the climb up Kesselchen. Eamon Murphy through Flugplatz, he will go just under half an hour on his stint timer. Gregor Schill, again, just beginning the Hatson back, half an hour on his stint timer. So pit stops should come just before we reach the hour mark, setting drivers up, of course, to go to the end. But I think some people may require that little splash and dash. Again, depends if the the race goes that +1 lap, or whether it does remain as it once was that we were watching earlier on, and the checkered flag comes out and the driver honourably slows down on the last lap to, of course, avoid going for that +1. But the +1 could really throw some people out of their pit stop cycle here.
Now let's see, 1:30, by the way, in virtual standard time, and in Central Europe as well. So we are approaching on that 4 p.m. finish. Just over 2.5 hours remaining in the final round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge for 2024. And it is still Jordan Sharrett leading, as he has been for some time. There are no real close battles on the circuit anymore. Szymanski got through on Koppel last lap and has just pulled away by 1.3 seconds or so. But the lack of close gaps is really what you'd expect at this time in an endurance race. We're speaking about the same thing 2 hours ago, but there can't be battles on the circuit all of the time. It's really waiting for that next pit stop phase, that next, I was going to say next bit of rain, but that might not come, for things to really be shaken up here, because generally in these races, with everybody doing the same amount, especially this happens at the Nordschleife, especially with everyone doing the same amount of laps in every stint and basically doing the same thing in every pit stop, it does mean that there is pretty little difference between how they can get from here to the very end of the race. And when the only difference really is drivers, you don't get much difference because of the quality in the field, throughout the field. So really, you're waiting for something unexpected to happen. If it's not going to be rain, then you're really looking at something unexpected, as I say, and maybe beginning to accept where you are in the field and look around a little bit for sure about what you might be able to get before the end of the race. But mostly, people would be accepting, I think, where they are in the field and that they might well finish there in 2.5 hours' time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Unless something drastic happens along the way, a sudden rainstorm floods the track out of nowhere. And again, everybody's kind of slipping and sliding, trying to get back to the pit lane. Somebody makes a slightly different strategy call. Again, it's not going to be big enough to kind of make up the margins that we're facing between a lot of the drivers here. So you've really got to just kind of lock in and just get ready for, of course, the checker flag to drop in about 2 hours 32 minutes. We're not too kind of far away from the top of the hour. And the only thing I could kind of think of doing right now is, if you're going towards the end of the race, you're coming into the to the last pit stop, of course, overfuel the car in that last stop. Of course, drive time 65 minutes. That will reset when you come through the pit lane, but could you brim the tank enough to be able to go that extra magical lap, which would, of course, negate the need for stopping the car, turning it off, dropping the fuel in, getting it fired again, and being on your way? You can just trundle through the pit lane, such as a drive-through penalty almost, just to reset that stint timer, because you've only got to cross the inline and the outline, and you get 65 more minutes on your driving time clock, providing, again, something you touched on earlier, individual drivers' times haven't been exceeded, which could be another spanner to kind of throw in the works as we get towards the end. A bit of an unexpected stop, though. The number 258 Porsche down the lane. I think that's slightly out of sequence from what we're expecting here. They last came in on lap 140, lap 147. It's about right, maybe, actually. Maybe the 258 Porsche has timed this one very well. But again, they're going to be liable for that splash and dash towards the end, providing it, of course, stays dry all the way through now.
I don't know if this is unscheduled, to be honest. We saw plenty of earlier stops in the previous rain cycle, and so this might just be one of those that has been created by the rain cycle, as Exo Ramino now will go through. This is third place now for BF Racing Esports, who, don't forget, still need to beat Samazdan Racing Esports if they want to win this championship. There's no point finishing on the podium if they're not going to finish ahead of ST Racing Esports, as there in the background goes the Porsche. So Cardinale has not spent very long in pit lane there, and he's back out again just behind Ramone. As you say, it is off schedule for the Porsche, but again, we are getting to that stage in the race now where people will be wondering, maybe we will get away without getting the wet tyres out again before the end. And if we are, how can I best take my fuel tanks in these final 3 stints to the end of the race? And they may decide, but well, we could probably get away with taking a lap off each stint, and we can still make it to the end comfortably with 3 stops remaining, now 2 stops remaining. And so maybe that's what they've decided to do, just keep the fuel load low throughout the stints by underfueling.
Yeah, it's a good observation there, actually, Ewan, on that one. Whether they are keeping the fuel levels low, just to try and keep that car much lighter as they go through these final 3 stints. Of course, it's something you've got to think about. If everybody else is dropping big, heavy fuel loads in to go for the hour, and you're only going for the 45 minutes, you're going to be underfueled by some considerable kilos. And of course, with the balance of performance in play today, that could make the car even lighter than what your rival is expecting, and could really catch out some people on that one. It was the number 258 down the pit lane, as we said. They were about on schedule. Last time they came down the lane, lap 140. They are currently beginning lap 148, so came into the lane at the end of the 7th lap, essentially, of that stint. So it's about right, I would say, on where we expect to see them on that one. Cardinale has given up to Pisano, so there's a new driver in that car, so they've slipped down to P14. Where obviously Axel Ramirez currently sits on the timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen, but that will update when we get through the timing gate at the end of Sector 1, just after Arenberg, so we should see a position switch there. That will, of course, promote BF Racing provisionally up into P3, although still Bastian Richter to get near, get past, and then catch Olivier in the 276. So it's a bit of a big ask. I think BF Racing at the moment, they've just got to keep this one clean to the end now. They've got to minimise risks and avoid fights that they don't need to necessarily get into. And if my eyes weren't mistaken then, I think I saw the glow of a pair of Porsche headlights as Axel Raminet crested over Flugplatz just in the background. So, I mean, the gap, it's there, but it's not particularly big as we go into Schwedenkreuz. Not the right camera angle I was hoping to see there, but I think the Porsche are still within touching distance, and I wouldn't discount them out of that bottom step of the podium just yet.
Oh, certainly not, because the 17 still has 3 pit stops to make, whereas the Porsche only has 2. So in a way, it doesn't even matter how far apart they are right now, whether they can see each other or not. The Porsche is close enough to the 17 to be able to get back ahead and still finish on the podium, I think. But let's wait and see on that front. Through the carousel goes Valentin Goppelt now in the lead of the silver class, as Dylan Tan also makes his way into pit lane. This is expected, really, because they made earlier pit stops than the BMW of Team Nitro. Although what is surprising is that Wojciech Fiala has fallen to nearly 30 seconds behind Frank when his gap was about half of that not so long ago. And that surely is a big dent in their hopes to try and finish 4th.
Yeah, absolutely so. It's, just got to make up all the kind of time that you can in this late stage. It's not a time to, be taking your foot off the gas. Everybody is still absolutely on it around you, and it's crucial that, you guys don't get caught napping, making the wrong decision call, of course, towards the end, because only just under 2.5 hours now remaining on the race clock. There's, still plenty of time to capitalize should your opponents fall foul of something, but at the same time, you don't want to be that guy making that mistake this late on, because you don't have enough time left in the race to rectify it. Of course, as we saw earlier on with the Gladius car, with the disconnect, some 4 hours to go. They joined back in the server. They're still where they joined back. They haven't made any progress in position-wise. Of course, time-wise, they're still trying to chip away at the number 44 Lamborghini, but just not enough in pure pace right now to try and climb their way back up through the silver field, as we see a few more cars coming down the pit lane. The number 20, I believe the Mercedes of Klopper, just down in P21 at the moment. They've come down for their scheduled stop, and it's all about breaking up this final stint into 3 equal stops, I would say. Of course, not negating the splash and dash that may come towards the end of the race. The number 4 serve their pit stop. Back out they will go. That's a 1:10, so that's a full service, fuel and tyres, and a driver change. Lars Kisser now finds himself into the number 4 Mercedes. Dylan Tan handing over on that one. And
that might be the last time we see Dylan Tan this season, unfortunately. It's from Singapore. The time will be getting on there now in the evening, and might leave it to the Europeans. Here's the Honda again. Marvin Butzin, who's in the Honda at the moment. How wonderful to see this car out there on the circuit again. I'm not sure it is the fastest of the GT3s, to be honest with you, although I don't know. It's not because it's not been taken up by any of the top teams, really. However, it is one of the best looking. You don't get to see it very often in real life, nor in the sim, and so how wonderful to have it here, still running in 24th place.
Yeah, it's a very pretty car, isn't it, in real life, in road going form, and even more stunning in GT3 form, with of course the extra wings and canards and diffusers bolted on everywhere, and fantastic, like you say, to see it still running in the order after a few big kind of impacts. We've seen lengthy repair times for the number 80. I have seen a few number 80 fans in the chat as well since we've come on air, so a well-loved team, the Myrtle Motorsport number 80 there, as they negate through the kind of middle sector of the lap, and still keeping it on the straight and narrow down in P24. But again, another team that hasn't given up along the way, coupled with kind of everybody down that end of the field. Of course, the number 21 hasn't had an ideal race, 8 laps off the pace, the 204 5 laps down, the 996 4 laps off, the number 11 3 laps down as well. So it's one of those things, isn't it, where the gaps are so large at the bottom, but everybody's just cycling around in their own kind of favorite space, let's say. Of course, nobody ahead, nobody behind, no real stress, just kind of a nice drive through the Eiffel countryside. But it's great to see everybody sticking it out and the sheer determination of some of these teams along the way. It's fantastic to see. And as earlier as I mentioned about the sun, Ewan, the clouds have rolled back in again. The forecast looking cloudy for the next 10 minutes. The next 30 minutes is cloud as well. Temperature still quite high though, 24 degrees in the air, 30 degrees down on the track. So Pirelli should have no problems maintaining some heat currently at this stage of the race. But never rule out the rain on the horizon. Clouds roll in. You know what that's followed by, especially from the race we've had so far for the last 22-ish hours or so.
I was going to say, yeah, that's not a good sign if the brief moment of sun that we were having is going away. Probably means that we are due for some more rain that we've endured throughout a lot of this race so far. So we follow Eamon Murphy here in the Veloce McLaren. Very experienced ACC driver, of course, is Eamon, for Veloce especially. Currently in fourth place in the Pro Championship, and I believe as things stand they'd be overtaking, they would be overtaking the 51 and 63 in the field to finish second in the championship, just as they are in this race. The 255 so far this season have only managed 7th in the race, in the championship I should say. Their best finish coming at Indianapolis earlier this season, where they were able to finish in third place, I think, third or fourth, and that's in that race. So that's where they've been roundabout. But here at the Nordschleife, it has just clicked for them. The Aston Martin getting on well with the circuit, the drivers clearly too, and they are leading at the moment by over 2 minutes. It's going to be, I was going to say over 3 very shortly because Eamon Murphy's in, but he's going on one more lap. But this just shows you the variety we were having and the changeable nature of the running order we were having throughout the previous rain period. That's happened about an hour ago now. Multiple teams making risks to either put another set of wets on when they maybe shouldn't have done. Somebody were taking the ultra big risk of putting a set of dry tyres on even though the conditions were still wet. It's a risk that paid off for the 28 team, although they're no longer leading. Have they come into pit lane? I'm sort of guessing they must have been into pit lane, because otherwise it'd be a very strange change to have Jacques Olivier now leading, but I'm going to guess it is a trip down pit lane that now sees them 25 seconds off the lead, now held by this Aston Martin.
Yeah, absolutely correct there, Ewan. The Samantha Tan car down the pit lane last time by Valentin Goppel, staying in the car, sorry, not giving it up, staying in the car. It was a 1 minute 10 through pit in to pit out, so a regular full service for the Samantha Tan car, tyres and fuel to boot. Whether or not they're going to try and extend this stint as much as they can or run a slightly lighter fuel load, of course, as soon as you tick tyres in the ACC pit window, it does default that pit stop to 30 seconds regardless, so it becomes a little bit hard to try and judge fuel loads on where people sit, and you do have to kind of just compare everybody around. But for now, the number 276 will inherit the silver lead by default, although they came through last time by on lap 142. This was one of those cars, remember, that did the splash and dash some 2 laps prior during the drying out phase of the circuit, came in, dropped a couple of 20 litres, 30 litres or so in, and went back out again before coming back into their pit box to fully service the car with a nice fresh set of dries. So it looks like a big lead at the moment, although Jacques Olivier should come down the pit lane relatively shortly to get their mandatory stop ticked off and then naturally tumble back down the order once again.
Yep, there is Axel Ravenet in third. BF Racing Esports currently only 3.6 seconds ahead of the 258 of Pisano. So not a big gap at all there for BF Racing Esports, who, don't forget, came into today leading the Silver Championship. We're just in a pit stop cycle, so not really worth going where they'd all finish if they finish as they are now, but it's certainly ST Racing Esports who are in control. Only 4 points behind the leaders, BF Racing Esports, at the start of the day, don't forget. such an incredible silver championship this season. Across the 5 races so far, the top 4 still only covered by 4 points. The top 6 only covered by less than 20. It's been a really remarkable season. However, it's going to come to an end here, and whoever wins this title is going to have thoroughly deserved it. That much is certain. As we see more pit stops here in the pro class, Wojciech Fiala is now into pit lane. And we've also had a driver change for the number 4 when they pitted 1 lap ago. Lars Kisser now at the wheel of that one. I wonder whether the early pit stop will have just helped them slightly. I think the gap with the gap between the number 5 and the number 4 being at nearly 15 seconds has really stifled any ambition for the number 4 to end up in 5th place overall. However, being on a slightly different strategy might just help, you never know. And we are still waiting for those final few to come in at the head of the race with 2 hours 17 to go. That means they're not a million miles away from being able to make it on just one more stop after this one, but I think everyone will have to make a splash at this stage.
Yeah, it's going to be awkward, isn't it, when we get towards the checker flag? There's going to be a few minutes left, and I don't think it's going to be enough to kind of slow up across a lap to draw that race timer down. But again, I could be proved wrong in about 2 hours 15 minutes time. Jonathan Riley into the pit lane for the Scuderia Ferrari Esports entry. Not really seen a lot from these guys in this last stint or so, as we watch William Pisano there overcook the carousel, jumps into it, and as fast as he's in, the Porsche's up the banking, out the other side and nearly into the Armco, but doing well to keep that Porsche in check. Sean Arnold also down the lane for the Veloce number 39 McLaren. In the background, that's the number 6 VSR entry. Currently Halama at the wheel there, P22. So slightly out of contention with the top end of the silvers, but still mixing it in nonetheless. So we're going to see a bit of a flurry, of course, of cars coming down pit lane, some on alternate strategies. You remember the Williams car with the slight splash and dash that they did when the rain was drying up again. They were one of 4 or 5 teams electing to do that strategy along the way. Meanwhile, we've got Axel Sports here, the number 21, coming into the carousel behind a Veloce McLaren green mirrors. That's going to be the number 40 of Eamon Murphy. Going to want to try and dispatch of this BMW relatively quickly, as we see a rare onboard there for the Axel Sports entry. Alistair Young currently at the wheel of that one, just in the background. Going to be conscious probably of Murphy catching, but depends how much the pace difference is. A bit of dust being kicked up there and some tyre marks going into the top of her act. I'm not sure if the number 11 up the road had made a mistake at that point. I didn't see a yellow flag, but maybe one very large slide through that corner. More cars down the pit lane. Race leader, the 255, Jordan Sherratt in. Also Olivia in the number 276, provisional silver leader. And Bastian Richter for Ren Velton also will trundle down pit lane this time by.
It's a steady flurry of pit stops rather than all at once, as we've seen throughout much of the last 6 to 7 hours, actually. It's a pretty steady amount of drivers coming in at once. As we said earlier, great to see Axel Sports back out there again, still out there again in this race. They are many laps down, as it says there, only 8 laps down. I know it says 9, but they're 8 laps down on the leader Jordan Sherratt, but still continuing on and still going to get to the end of the race, which is going to be an achievement within itself at a circuit like this. Such a challenging race just to survive the circuit itself, never mind all of the other competitors who are out there with you. It is a real mission to get to the end of one of these. Meanwhile, the battle for 10th place overall might well just be popping up here. I'm not sure whether that has changed from when the tower is showing us, but Szymanski, as far as that says, has been caught by Bastian Richter very nearly, and the gap only 2.4 seconds between the two of them. It's that part of the field again where the gaps are really quite small, and that was one of them, the battle for 10th place overall. So we'll see about that, as Alistair Young is just looking to his right hand side, not entirely sure what he's doing there, but looking to his right hand side so intently, and then looking where he's going. when he's not looking at his right, but he needs to look where he's going because he's got the second place McLaren coming through at him, and there we go, that was pretty easy. Straight through, there goes the McLaren of Eamon Murphy, and Young will continue on, but he was clearly doing something on the back straight there, no idea what it would have been.
Yeah, not too sure. I mean, judging by the light on his face getting a bit brighter, maybe looking back, maybe Young not playing with rearview mirrors, maybe relying on the radar in game, or just using the old look back button to see, of course, where Eamon Murphy was coming along. But yeah, certainly fiddling around with something on the keyboard there as he negates through turn one. I think we've got a bit of a false picture forming with lots of the pit stops throwing everybody on the left of the screen, of course, slightly out of sync. As they come through the first timing gate, it's going to update and probably shuffle that order about somewhat. The 255 competition car completed their stop. Conrad Ciata back out in that one, 1 minute 10 from in to out, so suggests a full service for them. Eamon Murphy still on the pit apron, waiting to get the go-ahead from the Veloce number 40 crew to get back underway on their crusade to the front. Gregor Schill comes in this time by as well, and logically with him should bring the sister BMW towards the top end of the field. The 717 for Team Nitro pitted on exactly the same lap last time, so logic states they should both be down the lane this time. Lars Kisser, though, has managed to jump ahead of the number 5 Williams car. Wojtek Fiala currently at the wheel of that one. Both very quick pit stops, although Williams delayed with something last time by. Looks like Lars Kisser 1 minute 10 from in to out, although Wojtek Fiala 1 minute 31. So there's about a 20-second time loss for Williams. And if you remember, we had the two locked together in a fight when the wet weather was subsiding not too long ago, and somehow Fiala losing 20 seconds in the pit lane, and the gap on the timing board on the left-hand side, Ewan, 20 seconds. So a costly stop there from the Williams camp.
I'm really not sure. Let's see what the actual... that can't be corrected, can it? 20.2 seconds between them? I guess maybe it is, but that's a lot bigger than I would have expected. And I know that, as you say, there has been a delay there. However, for it to be 20 seconds actual gap seems remarkable. So that could be a change for 5th place. We'll see with Maximilian Frank in the pit lane right now whether there's going to be a change for 4th as well here. Fiala is certainly going to be nowhere near it, but will Kisser be anywhere near? Pit stop being made currently by Frank, and Lars Kisser's only just making his way around Gauwenkopf now, so I would suggest that Team Nitro will hang on to 4th place here, and maybe that's just made them even more comfortable with Williams no longer the first chasers. They've given that over to HRT now, who were further behind them, and so the BMWs are now even more comfortable in 3rd and 4th.
Just seen a pop-up timing tower to the left-hand side of your screen. P4, the Team Nitro car netting themselves a stop-go 30 this late in the race is not going to be good, and that's Mabix back at the wheel as he exits the pit lane. He'll be told of that on his HUD in-game, and Maximilian Frank just a little bit too hot on the pit entry. We can only assume that that's what it was. We'd like to think drivers aren't kind of fumbling their starter buttons and their pit limiter buttons during their pit stop cycle, so a little bit too hot towards the 50k board, and that's exactly what you get for that one, and that's going to be big time loss for Maximilian Frank's efforts of what he's just carried out over the last hour or so.
Well, that's a huge change here. We could well see that car suddenly outside the top 5. The gap, though, as far as that says, is 91 seconds, so they might still be okay. We will wait and see. It's nearly our time coming to an end here, John. It's been good the last 7 hours or so. How would you summarise our run here? Right from the sunrise to 2 hours to go now. We're really at the business end of the race.
Yeah, I'd love to say the sunrise, but we really didn't see much sun during our morning stint, did we? Briefly trying to crack through the clouds about an hour or so ago, but you know, it's been great racing once again. It's exactly what you kind of expect from this level of competition. Of course, we started yesterday 41 cars, a high rate of attrition overnight. We saw the silver lead ripped away from the number 201. It's such a heartbreaking thing to happen, and no real chance, judging by what they've done in the last 2 hours or so since rejoining. There's no real chance to claw any position back, and it's such a heartbreak for the Gladius competition car. The Samantha Tan entering the number 28 has kept it honest throughout the morning. They've been consistent. We saw them with a big lick into the wall just before miss before they got to, of course, Siphon, and that was a lengthy pit stop, but they've managed to undo that one as well, and the number 276 keeping them very, very honest in their endeavours towards the front, with the 258 being a bit of a dark horse in the silver fight, but it's, you know, business end as usual at the top of the field. 255 competition just driving away from the field. A slight hiccup from Sherat with a stop go 30, but once again, when you've got a lead that big, Ewan, it's nothing, is it? You know, it doesn't even affect them at that point. It just draws them about a minute closer towards Boothby, but still, you know, 2 minutes of a lead is something to try and undo, even if you deliberately were picking up penalties along the way. It's you know, it's one of those things, isn't it? You're never going to undo 3 minutes of pure lead at that point.
Hard to say it mattered too much, to be honest, as we get through in towards a couple of hours remaining. It is time for myself and John to say farewell. A big thanks to everyone who's been tuned in over the course of the last 7 hours and kept us company in the 24 hours of the Nordschleife here this morning. But it's time, it's nearly 2 o'clock Central European and Virtual Standard Time, so it's time for myself, Ian O'Leary and John Tottenham to take our leave and to take you to the flag. It's Austin Polke and Mike Naus.
Certainly is. Hello, everybody. We are back, both Mike, myself, and of course, John. Thank you. Well, first off, thank you to John, and thank you, of course, to Ewan. But Austin, my goodness, what a race we've had so far. Looking at the standings from back about 8 hours ago when I checked out, it seems that our top 3 haven't changed that much in the pro category. However, the silver category, I'm noticing that we do have the 28 now leading. But such an amazing race so far.
Yeah, it's just been one of those stories where the fast continue to get faster, and of course there is no safety car, right, to break up the action. So you're just going to have gaps get ever increasing as the race goes on. But in the silver category, the battle in that championship is just turning out to be absolutely phenomenal. You talk about 4 teams coming in separated by 4 points, and they're really separated by just a couple positions out there on the racetrack. And I like how everybody's keeping each other honest. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen last 2 hours and some minutes.
Yeah, and one of my big movers that I've been keeping an eye on over the course of these past few hours is the number 44 of the Felix Tasvina Hacker, currently piloted in by that the Visceral Esports machine, running 5th at the time. That is going to be enough, I think, if they were to cross the line at this time, to manage 3rd position in the championship, which is absolutely incredible considering the fact that at one point in time they were basically bogged down in last place on the first lap of the race after being spun round, getting caught up in an incident early on. And since then, it's been nothing but forward for the 44 team. They've managed an incredible drive thus far, and still, with just 2 hours left to go, they're getting ever so close to that checkered flag.
Yeah, well, I think we should also talk, too, about not just the silver category cars, even though the championship battle is literally as good as you could want to have it. But how about the 51 car in the pro category, that Ferrari? We saw Zenko start out that car, bit of a rocky start, had to get his elbows out, was penalized for doing so, just trying to keep up all the track position he had, went to the back, went further to the back, had a penalty, stayed in the back a little longer, had some accidents, and they've just kind of slowly but surely been chipping away at whatever lead that the rest of the field had on them, and now we see that 51 car up into the 7th position overall, 7th as well in class, so I think we really need to give a shout out to them too for their phenomenal recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great shout, and potentially another free position heading their way with that drive-through penalty, or the stop-go 30 penalty, rather, of Bischoff in the 717, currently running in 4th position. Looking at the gap, though, it's going to be a little bit about 84 seconds plus to the next car. We'll see if that is going to be enough. We're looking about a minute stop here, but with that stop-go 30, really never know. But yeah, Riley currently behind the wheel, but that Ferrari Esports team has been absolutely on the pace, and watching them overtake the field was very entertaining as well. Considering the amount of racing that we've had throughout these night stints, that's one thing that I was absolutely shocked on when I was out there for the 8 hours. Just the amount of battling these guys have had, really willing to put it on the line in a 24-hour race and risk it all. And this car that we're looking at right now, currently piloted by Konrad Saita, the 255 competition, they've been utterly perfect this entire time. The last time I checked, there was about a 100-second gap between them, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that they've received a stop-go 30 penalty as well for speeding in pit lane. It doesn't matter. Still, George Boothby and the 40 Veloce team, nowhere in sight right now.
No, when you talk about 100 seconds, right? That's an immense amount of time. They're over about 130. I think the last time I saw the gap on the scoring pylon. At 120 seconds is 2 minutes. So they could literally park their car for 2 minutes and then just wait for the second place car to show up, and they'd still have about 17 seconds to get back on the power and start trying to eke it out once again. So to have a 2-minute lead is it's kind of mind-boggling, right? But this car is on rails. It's been on rails pretty much all night. I don't know what they've done to it under the hood, suspension-wise, setup-wise, and I think this team is really just a testament to how much they practice and how little these guys out here are making mistakes in a race like this.
Absolutely, and they also have the fastest lap to their name as well, which they set right after the rainy period about, again, 8 hours ago, and that time was about an 8 minutes 4 seconds and 0.64. You can tell it's nice and early over here in the States, in case you are curious. The big thank you to everybody joining us here on the GT World YouTube channel and the SRO Motorsports Twitch channel. If you guys are from the States, thank you, first off. Welcome. It's very early over here, and especially if you are on the West Coast. But if you are joining us wherever you are in this fine world, thank you. Say hello. Let us know who you're cheering on, as we have 2 hours left to the finish.
Yeah, getting down to the money end point of the race, it's hard to believe we've already been here for about 22 hours right in this race, kind of in the forests of Germany. And it looks like the Bischoff car, the 717, finally pitting. Looks like they're going to have to take advantage, or rather just kind of take it on the nose. That stop-go 30-second penalty. I'm not quite sure if that's going to do anything for the overall position of things. They do seem to still have a quite substantial gap in front and behind. We'll have to see, though. I'd be curious what that does to them overall, where that kind of lines them up in the pit strategy view for the rest of the race. You see there's that 717 car finally leaving the pits. They were there for about 30 seconds longer. So probably, a minute pit stop or so for them.
Yeah, and out, though, in 6th position, it seems, as we go in the timing charts, we'll be updating soon enough. The 717, the newly formed Team Nitro, getting a little slap on the wrist, but at the end of the day, it is a 24-hour race and 30-second stop-go. Certainly not what you want to be picking up with 2 hours remaining, but it is nothing to really get too upset about. It's not the end of the world when it comes to, I guess, a metaphorical drop in the bucket when it comes to the ocean that these drivers have participated in thus far.
No, it really is, and it's kind of inconsequential when you think about it, but it's still one of those things where your pride as a race car driver, you'd really prefer not to have any sort of those penalties, whether it's 5, 10, 15, even 30, right? That stop-go 30, that's really bad. And I think the worst thing about that is that stop-go, right? Because it's not just tacking 5 seconds or 10 seconds onto a pit stop. It's come down pit road explicitly for this 30-second stop-go. You can't work on the car. If you work on the car at all, you negate whatever stop-go penalty there was. So that's really the worst part about this entire thing for them, and I think that's one of the reasons they make, I think, does the punishment kind of warrant the crime or vice versa? I'm not sure. It's just one of those things, though, where they make the call and you have to go and do it. You can't really argue it, but finally making their left turn back up onto the Nordschleife, I'd be curious to see what they can make up before the end of this race. They've got about 2 hours left to get all the lead out of the thing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point as well that you mentioned with the fact that, yeah, it's a stop-go 30 penalty. It's not a 30-second time penalty, meaning the fact that they have to go down pit lane within 3 laps. Otherwise, they would have been disqualified. And obviously, that is not what you want to find yourself in with 2 hours left to go. There you can see, just in the background of Jeremy Leafy's shot, you can see the sun coming out as well, as it is going to be daytime in the Eastern European, or the Central European time zone right now. It's about 2 p.m. right now. And as I'm having whispered in my ear, it seems we are going to be expecting another bout of rain in roughly 30 minutes time.
Yeah, if you thought things couldn't get any better, we're going to have a little bit of rain coming in. I'll be curious to see, A, how hard it is, and B, how long it lasts, because those are the two deciding factors of whether you need to bring your car down pit road and put wet weather boots on, or whether maybe you just stick it out and elect to race around out there in the rain. Keep your slicks on. Maybe it won't be bad enough to warrant switching the boots on these cars. See, Jeremy, he's right. Man, you really have to get after it in this last couple chicanes of the racetrack because they're so fast and so technical. You can see how much he's doing that, and I'm kind of surprised by the windows being behind him. I always was afraid of that where I was before. If the window's behind you, you can never really see your screen, especially when it's day in real life and night in the sim.
No, I 100% agree with you. The glare that you get on your screen is typically beyond what I can handle, but either way, it seems that it's not bothering Leafy too much at this time. But yeah, when it comes to the rain hitting, that's kind of been the interesting conversation throughout the entirety of this race, as it's been, especially in the midnight stint. It rained for about 20 minutes, then it would stop for about 20 minutes, then it would rain for about 20 minutes, and then stop and then rain. And you could repeat that for about 10 different times before we got to the conditions that we're at today. And one of the things that's led to that I've looked at is the fact that our race leader has made 30 pit stops over the past 20 hours. Now, you'd expected a 24-hour race with a 65-minute stint timer to make roughly 24 stops, right? That's the logical thing. But no, these conditions have not allowed that to be a reality whatsoever. And we have 30 pit stops to the name, and still with 2 more left to go.
Yeah, it's funny too, because you think about a lot of 24-hour races, and sometimes you just get one of those, I'm going to call it a gremlin of a race, where the conditions constantly change, and sometimes even in real life, they'll just end up putting out the red flag to say, hey, it's raining too much, the weather is too crazy, we're just going to stop the race for safety. Luckily in the sim, we don't have to do that. A, it doesn't get bad enough, and B, we're not going to be babies about it. We're just going to keep racing, right? Who cares? But it's weird because some races, even in the sim, 24 hours of completely bone dry racing. The temperature obviously is going to fluctuate, right, with sun up, sun down. But in the sim, it's crazy that you just have these races where it rains on and off on for about 24 hours. And yeah, that is such a crazy stat that you would imagine, right? 24-hour race, stint times are 65 minutes. This place is kind of weird though, and I've been saying that especially the first couple hours when I was here with John yesterday, was that their stint time is a max of 65 minutes. Around here, the lap time is such that you really get about 5 laps in or so, and then you're done. You have to pit, right? 5 times 8. Or excuse me, 12 laps in, that's about 60 right there on the dot. You can't go another lap unless you're either much faster or you've been much slower in order to really take advantage of that difference between 60 to 65 minutes. So we've been seeing a lot of guys kind of pitting every hour on the hour, or just an hour, right, after they were last in the pits.
Yeah, and honestly, even less than that to what I'm seeing, but 7 laps is the maximum amount of time that they're allowed to stay out there, and that's going to push them to that about hour mark, the 58-minute mark, somewhere around that range. But again, with these wet weather conditions, we've been seeing 4-lap stints, 4-lap stints, 3-lap stints, 5-lap stints, a couple 1-lap stints as well, where people miss gambling on the tires, and that's just the nature of the beast of the Nordschleife, is you can predict it wrong here. You say, oh, well, it's going to rain for 10 minutes. That means I might need to throw wets on. That's only 1 lap. And is it worth the struggles of throwing the wets on so you just have to pit again and put the dries on? I don't know. That's for these drivers to decide, and that's the conversation that they've had to make, and the reason that they put the amount of practice in that they have. They know these conditions like the back of their hand. They know these cars as well, and they know how they handle when the getting gets tough. And you can see here, the 276 of Leafy been doing a stellar job. 2nd position right now. They were up in the lead at one point, and this ERE race team, I think if I'm not mistaken, if they do finish ahead, no, excuse me, that is of course going to not, or no, it will put them into the lead of the championship, as I think those two are battling it out right now.
Yeah, and how about this? I feel like the Jaws theme must be playing right here for Jeremy, because he's got Burnt right behind him in the number 72. Of course, that's a pro car, that yellow Ferrari you see right in the middle of your screen, smack dab coming through. He's been chasing him down for quite a while. I think he'll probably catch him by the end of this lap. But of course, no harm, no foul for those two, because they're, of course, silver with the Aston and pro right there for the Ferrari, just getting into the shot.
And the two different categories, not too worried about racing each other. That's kind of been the trend that we've seen, but obviously is you want a little bit of a buffer to the cars around you, and having those gold or pro plate cars around you will help you, of course, and that'll also give you a little bit of a benchmarker here, as Leon Burnt is going to catch up relatively quick here in that 72, Ren Welton, and they're going to be making probably pretty easy work of Leafly, and they're not going to fight it too hard, is my prediction. The 276, we might see them not yield the position too easily, but if the 72 does get fully alongside or really make a committed attempt, I don't see the 276 going for a defense that's going to be tooth and nail at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure they're just going to let the position slip on by and use the Ren Welton as a bit of a slipstream.
No, and why would you really? I mean, at that point, right, they're not in the same class as you. There's really no point holding them up other than, I guess, just the pride of saying we beat another pro driver and we're in the silver category. But no, I think once that Ferrari gets up there and kind of pokes his nose and says, hey man, I'm here, I'd like the spot, I'm faster than you, and it's pretty obvious, right? He's faster, he's been running them down slowly but surely, you know, kind of in calculus, you say, you know, he's halving the gap, right? Every so often, and even though it might never truly go away based on that, he's getting closer and closer all the time. And plus, I mean, if you're the 276 car, the last time I checked the championship, I'd be curious to see what the points are like now. I think it's still the 28, but I could be wrong there. But also the 258, way back there in the rear view mirror, so it's not like letting the Ferrari go right here is really going to cost them a position even out on the racetrack.
Yeah, and actually I think it is whoever wins between the two silver category cars, so the 276 and the 28, whoever ends up finishing ahead is going to end up winning the championship, as that is how close it is right now between those two cars. And we're going to be potentially seeing a last lap battle, and we'll see though 40 seconds is the gap to thwart right now for the Aston Martin and the ERE. Still a bit of work to do, but there is still quite a bit of time left, and in a 2-hour sprint, really anything can happen in racing, and it normally does. We've seen that already with penalties being handed out, and that can happen at any point in time. Track limits warnings also need to be a consideration. It's been 24 hours. Have these drivers experienced a drive-through yet? The Nords, I will say, is one of the tracks that you don't necessarily worry too much about drive-throughs, just due to the fact that if you do go off the circuit, you're more than likely just going into the barrier. You can see how close the walls are at all times. Not too much runoff area here.
No, there really isn't. It's kind of one of those places. It's like a street course or like Bathurst, you know, where if you're going to go off the track, you're probably going to get junked rather than save the car and keep going on. So you don't see too many of those off tracks to warrant a drive-through at some point in time. But it's been 24 hours, 22 and some change at this point. So if we were going to see a drive-through penalty for too many off tracks or field trips, right, excursions, we'll call them, this is the time they'd come about. Speaking of which, looks like Burnt's right up there to the back end of that Aston Martin. I would expect he'll get a lot of draft down here on the back straight. We'll see if he puts his nose out. I don't know if he get close enough, but obviously the closer you get, the more the draft is going to work in his favor. So we'll see what happens down here at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, this is the best overtaking opportunity on the circuit on the Dottinger, and you can see the 296 up to full chap here as the turbocharger kicks in with that slipstream. Going to be descending the hill now down to the last little chicanes, and you need to be fully alongside if you want to make a committed move here, and the 296 knows that Leon Burnt is just going to have to stick behind and wait, but the opportunity will potentially arise here as we come onto the GP circuit now, rounding that final corner and onto the start-finish straight now. The first corner is another very good opportunity, the NGK chicane. Slipstream hand here again for the number 72, but it seems the gap is just a little bit too much. Leon not going to be overly exuberant about getting by, just kind of patient about it and waiting for the right moment to strike.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I think he gave up a lot of time in those two chicanes before the start-finish line. I really felt, based on what we'd seen right down the Dottinger, he was going to be close enough to warrant not a dive bomb or a severe one, but just to chuck it up the inside and see if you could get the pass done. We've seen that a lot over the last 22 hours and change, but looks like he's going to have to just kind of stick himself right behind that Aston Martin and just continue to follow him. And to be fair, at this point, he's kind of like 55 seconds up the road before he gets to Szymanski, the next pro driver in line, and I think he's got, according to the pylon, 40 seconds and then 2 laps before David Janitz is going to catch him up. So I don't think he's in too big of a hurry, but it's one of those things where, like, look, dude, I ran you down I'm faster. We're in different categories. Just let me by, man.
Yeah, exactly. As it's technically no blue flags being waved, and even if there were blue flags being waved, these are not the same blue flag rules that you see in Formula One. You do not have to move out of the way within the first 2 marshal posts. It's merely a warning to tell the driver ahead not to encroach and not to hold up the drivers behind, which is currently what we're seeing. But again, we don't see that blue flag, and you can see the eagerness right now on Leon Berndt as he knows that as we go through the Schumacher S's, he's running out of opportunities. As we approach the Coca-Cola curve now and round onto the Nordschleife into Hatzenbach, your opportunities really close down, and you're just going to have to settle into the traffic. And it's a bit like being on a windy country road that's 1 lane, and you end up catching a slightly slower car than you were traveling, and the frustration can be a little immense despite the fact that it's just unreasonable. As we said, Leon doesn't really have a target up the road in terms of long-term. Szymanski for 9th position is a ways away. Still not out of the cards, but certainly is quite a sizable gap right now, but the gap is not going to be closing if he doesn't make the overtake on the 276.
No, and we were just talking about rain coming in probably like 20 minutes at this point, so I'd be curious, again, like we talk about, it's what you do to kind of bet on yourself or bet on the rain being either way worse than most teams think or not worse enough, right, where you say, well, we're going to keep our slicks on, safe pitting that extra time. And again, we keep saying it, but this is such an oddity of a racetrack where it's 16 miles long. Most tracks are anywhere from 2.5 to 5, right? So your lap time is about anywhere from 1.5 to 5 minutes, right, on the very top end. Lap times here are about 8.5 minutes. So to be out there with the wrong set of tires, usually on a shorter, regular racetrack, right, you're going to add seconds to a lap, but here you're looking at adding an entire minute if you're out there just struggling on the wrong set of tires. Looking here, though, at the back, I'm going to say half of the track, I don't know if Leon Berndt is kind of more lackadaisical with how close he is when he's following, but I'm almost kind of curious if through a lot of these twisty bits that Aston Martin might just be a little bit better when it comes to the Nordschleife.
Yeah, very well could be a little bit more grip in the front end, and the Ferrari just might be a little bit more trim for the straights is what we've seen so far. The real overtaking opportunity, though, will be presenting itself somewhat soon on the exit of Bergwerk and down through Kesselchen towards the carousel is where you're going to be looking out, ideally, to make moves if you can on the Nordschleife. It's still difficult, though, is the problem, as they're going down the hill now towards the slowest part of the track. Again, even this fact that this is the slowest part of the Nordschleife, you're still not going to be making too many opportunities. They go through miss, hit, miss, and down the hill, back towards the Metzenfield, I think is how that's said. There it is, the slowest corner on the track, which you can see ever so graffitied on the circuit. Very realistic as well. This track modeled so well in Assetto Corsa Competizione, I have to say. Of course, it is the most recent laser scan, so I would hope so. And there actually is the slowest part of the track, is of course all these corners with however many corners there are, and again, it depends on who you ask, but if you were to ask me, this track has 87 corners, 42 to the right and 45 to the left, which, yes, Austin, as you were saying, is a little bit more than your typical circuit. I think the most corners you're going to see is maybe 22 at, like, Jeddah Corniche, for example, or 20 at Circuit of the Americas, but rarely do you see anything more than, well, 30 for sure.
Yeah, it's just, again, the oddity that makes the Nordschleife just kind of one of its own, right? I mean, show me another track with A, the challenge, B, the prestige, C, the history, right, to rival a place like this. Berndt kind of sticking his nose out a little bit, just trying to remind Jeremy, hey, I'm here. If you wouldn't mind, just let me by. Maybe you could draft behind me. Yeah, I'd like to make some progress further up the field, but it looks like these two guys just still continuing to follow each other. Let's see what happens here into the carousel. I don't anticipate much of a position change, though, because it's kind of one lane only. I really doubt right now that Jeremy would just kind of go to the top side and let Leon by, and indeed he won't.
We have seen a couple mistakes there throughout this race so far, where drivers do end up bottoming out, going wide, and handing a position over just from the pressure alone. I believe he has no intentions of that right now. Clearly not wanting to budge, as he feels that he's quicker than Leon. See, now one of the things that I maybe would like to see is just letting Leon go if you are the 276, because maybe, just maybe, he'll be quicker than you, and you can use him as a slipstream to catch back up to the 28 Samantha Tan racing team and have a bit of a race later on. Now, this is long-term strategy, obviously. The thing is short-term, this isn't benefiting Jeremy whatsoever. In fact, it's only harming both of their races. So I would like to see a little swapperoo maybe, and work together, quote-unquote, as the enemy of my enemy is my friend, of course.
Yeah, I'd be surprised too, right? Even if you can't work behind him and get that slipstream, let him pass you. Let him go run down that 28 just up the field of Goppel and see what happens to the 28. Maybe they make a mistake and get into each other. You get a free position. Maybe he goes up there, starts hounding the 28 machine, and they just slow each other down. And eventually you kind of run down, catch up to him a little bit, and now you can put them on the back foot and put the race more in your control, because right now, you know, you can control your own destiny if you're leading the race, right? We just talked about that. Whoever wins the race is going to win the championship between those four teams that were so tightly compacted in championship standings entering today's race. So if you want to control your own destiny, you need to get up there, and you're not getting up there by keeping this Ferrari behind you.
No, you're really not, and you can see they're a little out of shape through the second carousel. Is that going to be the weakness that the Ferrari is looking for? I think the blood is being smelt in the water by Leon Burnt right now, and as they round onto the Dottinger, this might be the writing on the walls for the Aston Martin. The slipstream has had the Ferrari 296 Turbo trying to kick in right now. It's known for its straight line speed, but the gap is almost a little bit too much. It's going to be closing down constantly over the next 1.5 miles, 1.5 mile long straight here at the Nordschleife. And now you can see closing is Leon. But I mentioned it earlier, and we'll mention it again. You have to be fully alongside if you want to make the overtake into the final sectors. Leon Burnt currently not alongside enough. He's going to be just using that time, though, to close up to the rearview mirror now, as he's going to be making a look into the first corner of the GP circuit. He needs to prioritize your exit here. Slingshot yourself out of this corner like a cannon and fire yourself down to the NGK chicane, where the potential move will be on. Long run now down, but the gap still just a little bit too much, it seems. He's going to try the inside line anyways. Down to the inside goes the Ferrari 296. The Aston Martin trying to go for the switchback defense. And the Ferrari, Leon Burnt, actually has made it by. Lick the stamp and send it. The number 72 is ahead.
Yeah, textbook pass there. I was thinking he was a little bit too far back. I feel like the 276 was kind of working with the 72 there. Could have made it a little bit more difficult on him, especially given just the body language, right? Of that car broke in a straight line and then turned into the corner once he realized that the 72 was going to go for a dive bomb like that. So textbook pass, and now I'm curious to see what that 72 can do and how well the 276 can follow him through. Looking back further in the field, Marco Lomi, the number 201 Aston Martin for Gladius Competition. They're down there in 17th position overall, kind of just doing their own thing right now.
Yep, just in their own little bubble for the Gladius, and they need to find a little bit more pace right now, does Lomi. Looking at the charts right now for the silver category, the 201 Gladius Competition is currently running in second at 110 points, actually tied, I should say, for first right now with the BF Racing Esports team in the silver standings coming into this race. But as it stands, that is not going to be the result that they're looking at. They need to find quite a lot more pace out there and eventually try to overtake Felix Tesvina Hacker. But even that, as I have to say, the 44 has just been on the ball with the pace. I mentioned that about 20 minutes ago. They have just been smashing the lap times time and time again, and they're running third in the championship right now for the 44, so they have a little bit of a mission on their hands as well right now. But the talk of the town, the Samantha Tan Racing team for the silver category, because they have just been utterly dominant this entire time. Really, the only time we've seen any form of competition for that was the Gladius of Marco Lomi in the 201 earlier, but that was because they hadn't changed brakes yet, and that's something, of course, in a 24-hour race, every single one of these drivers do need to take breaks at some point, and they have already, I would presume, with 2 hours left. I certainly would hope so. And Marco Lomi, he is no stranger to that one, and he had to hand that position back, taking that 45 seconds.
Yeah, I remember back in the 24-hour race at Spa earlier this season, there were some teams kind of hemming and hawing, debating whether they should end up changing their brakes or when they would do that. And I'd say the more you put it off, the slower you go. It's just not worth it. I think it's a short-term gain for a long-term loss. So I really like the fact that all the teams, at least today, it seemed like from my side, just as a spectator kind of in and out of the night there, that everybody was kind of changing their brakes when they needed to, right? Kind of all realizing that it's going to hurt us right now, but it'll help us overall because you're a race car, you're going fast, you do kind of need brakes when you're trying to make the corners.
That's definitely a little bit of an understatement, as brakes are, as I often will say, the literal most important part of your car, even more important than the engine. And people say, well, how can that be? Well, because well, I'll let you think about that one. How about that for a second? It's pretty self-explanatory. Is obviously in order to stop your car, you need the brakes, and in order to make the car go, well, you need an engine. But if you don't have brakes, you're just going to end up careening into a barrier. We've seen that one too many times in this race so far. In fact, again, we go back to the first lap where we saw pretty much exactly that. And here is our race leader for the silver category. This is currently Vincent Goplet in the Samantha Tan Racing number 28, all on his lonesome. He's looking for some friends right now, or maybe not.
Well, it depends what a friend is in racing, right? but no, I think he's out there kind of all by himself, and he's got that insurance right now. That 72 car as well is about a 50 or 60 second gap all the way back to the car behind the 276 in class, right in his category. They are kind of all on their own right now, though, for that Samantha Tan Racing Esports Mustang. You look out the windshield, clean track. You look in the mirror, clean track on another one of those cars in their own bubble, and that's just how it gets at the end of these 24-hour-long races. And look at this, Aston Martin on Aston Martin action. This is not for position. This is the leading car, Conrad Sienna 255 competition car, Pro Class category, trying to put the silver category Aston Martin one lap down. And interestingly enough, for the race leader, he'll pull over right away. But if you're just in the pro category and you're not leading the race, I think he's going to make you work for it.
Yeah, very respectable blue flag work there from our P2 sitter in the silver category right now. Not wanting to impede, and again, just trying to use these cars to his advantage, gain some slipstream here. This is a great spot to do so. And you had mentioned there briefly the track being cleaned. This is something as well that's been in the back of my mind, as we had that little bout of rain predicted in 30 minutes. Well, we're getting very close to that window, and you can actually see the sky, I think, starting to darken a little bit, and the rain should be just around the corner and hitting it pretty much any moment. And that's going to throw another monkey wrench into this equation. And what are the drivers going to do? How long is the rain going to last? Do you take wets? Do you stay on dries? What do you do here? I don't know, because the thing is, we're at 1 hour and 36 minutes left, so if you do make your pit stop, you're still good to make 2 pit stops to the end. I don't know. What's the call? I guess the call is how hard it rains, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I'm going to need to wait to see how hard it rains, but I'll tell you, the teams all kind of have their own, we'll call meteorologists, right, on the pit wall to let them know, hey, we expect this rain will be heavy enough that we need to come down pit road and put on wet weather tires, or we're just going to stay out there and go much slower for 2 laps. But overall, we still should come out ahead. So I think we're just going to have to wait to see when it starts to rain and how long it is and how heavy it is, as we look at Tommy Lydon here and the number 224 BMW for Genesis Esports. Again, another silver car. You look in front, nobody behind, nobody for about just as big of a distance. So it's how these long endurance races go. You get out there and you can just kind of put your head down, and this is when, as a race car driver, you really just start to zone out. And for me, this is the most fun that you ever have in an endurance race, is when you're just out there laying down lap times and being consistent. You got nobody kind of interrupting you, getting in your way. It's just a good time.
No, absolutely. This is just the hot lapping session where you put all of your practice and try to put your money where your mouth is. We also do, it seems like, have a battle developing here for P5 between Bischoff and the car ahead right now. Definitely, we'll be taking a look at that within a little bit here, but the 224 Genesis Esports car, again, just hot lapping on the Nordschleife. You can kind of get into a little bit of a lull, though. That's one thing about this track in particular, is maybe this is more of an amateur thing for myself, where I just don't know this circuit as well. But this is kind of one of those tracks that I had mentioned earlier. It has over 80 corners on it, and you kind of can get into a little bit of a lull, a false sense of security when you get into these comfort, just hot lapping windows, and all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, cool, I got another right-hander coming up, but you realize that you're thinking about the wrong right-hander, and maybe it was actually a left-hander coming up, and you sort of forget the layout of the track when you've been lapping it for enough times. And I know that sounds, you know, different to some people that maybe haven't driven this track an extended period of time, but it just gets fatiguing in a way that no other circuit does. And again, you really just, there's not many tracks that you can forget where you're at certain points.
Yeah, it's not. It's interesting that you say forgetting where you are, because usually that'll happen to me here as you're kind of just riding along. You start to zone out, all of a sudden you come to, right? It's one of those things where your body will breathe on its own until you say, hey, are you breathing right now? And then you go, screw you, man. I was breathing just fine, not having to think about it. Now I have to. Where you kind of wake up out of that trance, you're like, oh no, where am I on this track? I'm pretty sure it's a double left-hander. Is this miss? And it's no worse, in my opinion, than on the second half of the track when you're in that fast, flowy section, right? Just before you get down to the dotting, or where you know, the corners look very kind of samey, right? And you're just like, oh no, I really don't know where I am.
No, exactly. I've had faced that too many times on this circuit. And one of the other things to keep in mind as well is these drivers are going to be facing fatigue at this stage, as they have, every single one of these drivers has put in at least 3 hours at the bare minimum, and presumably even more than that by this stage. So they're going to be facing a little bit of tiredness. They're going to be facing a little bit of, man, I really just want to make the checkered flag at this stage. And is that going to put them into a little bit of a lull state, a bit of complacency, as the BMW there, the back end, steps out? What a save, though, from the 96 there of Tuda. And there it is, just like on cue, the rain is falling on the circuit as these two round onto the dotting there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Szymanski, the number 38 Pro Ferrari, just came down pit road. They've since then left pit road. I don't know if they put on wet weather tires, but you see Pisano on pit road already, so I'd be curious to see. It's raining right now. Be a great opportunity for him to maybe put on some wet weather boots. If he's not going to put on full wet tires, do you maybe overinflate your dry tires just to kind of take advantage of that cooler track, or maybe not take advantage, but make sure that your car can handle for this area of the race. You see there the Ferrari letting Daniel Bine, the number 96 silver category car, not a battle for position, just a pass out there on the racetrack. We'll see if these two drivers come down pit road. I would imagine they won't. The rain doesn't look heavy enough, but we'll see if anyone does. Oh, looks like Tuda is. I believe the Ferrari behind him stayed out, though.
Does look that way. And we also see that's the number 63 Lamborghini out of shot there. I think that, pretty sure who that was. David Tanitsa in the pit lane as well. Was right behind Ramine, it looks like, and has decided to go in for a pit stop to strap on a new set of boots here, presumably the wets. We'll be keeping an eye. You can see that Pirelli P0 striping on the wall of those tires. That's what we're looking for to disappear. If that does disappear when they come out of pit lane, that means that they will be on wet tires, and it's kind of hard to catch. That's dry tires, though, for Kin Long Lee here in the number 996. So electing to go for the dries. Let's see, what does David Tanitsa elect for when he does come out? Our leader, interestingly enough, by the way, Konrad Saita, did not have the opportunity to pit. By the time the rain had fallen, they were already past pit lane, so had no opportunity. And there you can see the Pirelli P0s are no longer on the BMW and no longer on the Lamborghini either. And we have wet weather tires back out on this circuit.
Yeah, very interesting take for them, and I will say, phenomenal opportunity, right, to be right by pit road as soon as the rain starts. Definitely, I think you want to bolt on the wet tires if you think the rain is going to last long enough, and I think for everybody else, this could be a huge disadvantage for them, because if you're on the back half of the race course, dare I say, just going into turn one, right, you just missed the pit entry, and then it starts to downpour. This is going to be one of the worst laps of your life, and you can see Conrad right now really having to struggle with the grip of that race car with how wet it is. And of course, we say these GT3 cars, they do have ABS, they do have traction control, but a lot of these drivers are going to turn it down just because you'd much rather drive the car by yourself. And for most of us, I would say, mortals, right? You go out there, if you have a fast car, you turn the traction control off. I would say about half the time you can beat it, right? But you leave it on just in case. You'd rather not junk your stuff and then have to call your insurance agent. So you'd rather just leave it on all the time. But these guys, they're pros, and it's also in the simulator. They're going to try to find that level of grip, and more often than not, they just elect turn the traction control off. I'll drive the car myself.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, as you said, the difference between us mere mortals and these professionals out there is their ability to use no traction control in some of the most difficult conditions. When typically, you or I might be putting on TC1, TC2 just to be safe. And we'll be losing typically what that's going to do, by the way, for anyone curious and saying, well, traction control is there as an assist, right? It's there to help out the lap time. Yes and no at the same time. So what it's going to do is it's going to bog your engine down when you get on the accelerator. You're going to have a little bit less power out of the corners. And for the most part, that doesn't really matter when you're a more mid-pack driver, when you're kind of just learning the game as well. You want to have that TC on because it's obviously better to be losing 2 or 3 tenths per lap than it is to be losing 2 or 3 seconds per lap, if not even more, because the fact that you're facing the wrong direction. It's very easy for these cars, especially the car that we're looking at right now, the Samantha Tan Racing Esports Ford Mustang GT3. This car has about enough torque to tenderize an elephant and will spin you round quicker than you could imagine.
Yeah, and I will say for some of these cars, right, wrong, or indifferent, if you look at a car where the engine is in the front, all the weight is over the steering axle, it's good for cornering, but it's very bad for trying to accelerate, especially in these wet/damp conditions. Ideally, for wet weather running, you'd rather have a car where the engine is, if it isn't mid-engine, it's rear engine. So all the weight in that car, or most of it from the engine, right, is over that rear axle. It's going to give you a much easier opportunity to put the power down coming out of a corner. Now, granted, how does that affect handling and all that? We're not going to get into it right now, but just for putting down the power in these situations, something where the power plant is over the drive axle, much better in these conditions.
Man, one thing that is not much better in these conditions is, well, the conditions themselves. My goodness, it is bucketing down right now as it seems the rain has increased. I'd be curious to know what the weather prediction is for the next 30 minutes, if we are going to be forecast to let off or if this rain is scheduled to continue potentially for the rest of the race. That would be very interesting and add a whole nother level that these drivers did not expect. You can see Vincent here, he's still on those dry tires. Doing a good job, to be fair, of keeping it on the circuit. All 4 tires facing the correct direction. The car still intact, which is, as Murray Walker would say, an absolutely perfect race as far as he's concerned. But with those dry tires on, he's going to be wanting to come in sooner rather than later and strap on a set of wets.
Yeah, I will say right now, though, you don't see a whole lot of standing water out there on the racetracks. Granted, it did just start to rain kind of about maybe 6 or 7 minutes ago, so nothing too bad just yet, but you do see how much he's having to work the throttle and the steering wheel a lot more often than he normally would, especially when you see him kind of on these big acceleration zones, right? Where the speed is already up, you don't have to worry too much about it, but when you get a really slow corner, then you have to put the power down, you can really see him start wiggling. That rear end is a track, I would say right now, probably in a greasy condition.
Yeah, you're probably right there, and we'll see. Let's keep an eye on these drivers. Looks like Leon Otaki did elect to come into the pit lane this lap, as it seems that they are on wet weather tires. I can't quite see, though, if they do have the Pirelli P0 logo on the side of them. Hard to catch. That's unfortunately the only way that we really have of telling in this simulator what tires they are on. Love it if they have a tire graphic at some point, but I don't think we're ever going to be that in that favor, unfortunately. It's just going to be down to what we have right now. And Leon Otaki trying to negotiate this circuit here, and he will have what looks to be another 2 pit stops down to the end here before he reaches the, 1 more pit stop before they reach the checkered flag.
Yeah, 1 more for sure. I'd be curious to see if we're going to have 2, right? If it rains bad enough to warrant all these drivers on dry tires to come down and put wets on, and then curious to see if it'll dry out fast enough to warrant them having to come down and put the slicks on. And Leon's really having to drive that thing, and this is what I was saying, that the track continues to get more and more slick, and you're going to see these drivers more often than not kind of just hanging the rear end of the car out, dog tracking, if you will, kind of dirt style or rally car style back in the day when they weren't all-wheel drive. Yeah, you can see he's really giving it the beans right now.
Yeah, he certainly is, and he did make his pit stop on the previous lap, so this is really Leon just trying to get the heat into those tires, those wet weather tires that do not have blankets. for them. Or do they actually? That's a question that now that I think about it, don't know the answer. I probably shouldn't have said that now that I think about it. Do they have blankets for the wet weathers? I can't remember.
That's a great question. I'm not sure about that, but regardless, I even see the leader overall in both categories for the race. Sienna in the 255, Aston Martin has brought their car down onto pit road, so I would imagine they're putting on wet weather tires as well. So I think a lot of drivers kind of opting to realize, hey, it's going to rain for a long time, and I think that's why we see so many people coming down onto pit road, right? And this really highlights just how spread apart the field is, right? You know, back before, you used to see everybody coming into pit road at the same time, whether it was just a driver stint time, you'd see everybody, right? Kind of all those P's on the left-hand side of your screen, they just go down in kind of a wave formation because the field was split up that much. But now it's multiple laps between some of these positions, some drivers, so you're just going to see those P's kind of trickling in and out all the way up and down the leaderboard as this wet weather continues, and you start to see a little bit of that standing water out there on the racetrack.
Yeah, no sign of the rain letting up just yet. These drivers are electing to say, well, you know, maybe the rain's only going to be around for 10 more minutes. Well, I'm not going to be able to survive for 10 more minutes if I don't put on a set of wets. And that has been, well, the 31st pit stop for the Leon Otaki team, the 717, or excuse me, that was 717 talking about the Leon Otaki, though. Also around that 30 pit stop mark for the number 4 AMG team. Again, you would have expected 24, but no, this is just a different type of endurance race out there, and this is an endurance race for the heart as much as it is for the mind.
Yeah, it's one of those that you always get excited to do as a fan, as a race driver. It's just one of those things. It's such a daunting task. You kind of want to see people do it, right? I would compare it to like a David Blaine being underwater for a couple of days or doing some death-defying feat. You're kind of like, man, I don't know if I'd want to do that, but I'll watch somebody else do it because that's interesting, and that's what the Nürburgring 24 is for me. I've done it once or twice, and it's one of those things where like I kind of know where my talent level is and what I like doing, and this is just I'll watch somebody else do it, but I think it's a little bit too difficult for me.
Yeah, that's the Nürburgring, the Nordschleife is one of those tracks. Also, Bathurst for me is another one of those tracks that I just, for whatever reason, don't have the ability to drive. But my goodness, do I enjoy watching people drive that circuit, as it is one of the most impressive in the world. And this track also, again, not far away from that title either, if not maybe the most impressive track in the world, just due to the fact that it's so old, has so much history to it. And over the years, it really hasn't changed much, for all intents and purposes. It is still kind of the raw grit racetrack that we've seen back from the 20s. There are not many racetracks around like this anymore.
No, and I'll say too, right, just to look at all these Armco barriers up, there's no catch fence in some of these areas of the racetrack. If you get that car turned around, right, and you look at the wing, that's a giant, well, it's a wing. It's going to make the car go up in the air. The same with the diffuser. Air's going to get under there, flip the car around. It's exactly what you saw if you watched the Gran Turismo movie. That Nissan getting turned around and going up into the air, that would happen to any of these cars if they got turned around in some of these places. And there is no catch fence. There's just the Armco barrier and then trees. And trees stop cars very well, but they also hurt cars and drivers, right? When you hit them. I will say too, one of the things about practicing for this racetrack is you look at if I'm going to prepare for an endurance race, I try to do at least 100 laps, right? At least I always do one stint perfect all the way through. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm practiced enough, and you're never going to get to one stint all the way through perfect without doing at least 50 to 60 laps out there. At a track like this, the time commitment to do just that compared to a Spa or a Monza, even a Sebring or a Daytona, is so much more. I mean, it's practically 4 times as much compared to those ones, and that's really what turns me off in doing one of these races, especially is the commitment to know that I'm going to be able to perform in the race is just too great to really set aside all that time, and that's for me what's the most impressive about all these drivers and teams. There's 3 or 4 drivers on all the teams. They're building setups, they're practicing. Just the amount of time that goes into this series. This race alone is ludicrous to me.
No, absolutely. That is an excellent point as well, as these drivers, yes, they put in the hard work. And you might say, well, If I do 100 laps on the Nürburgring, then obviously I can get away with doing the equivalent amount of time on the Nordschleife, right? Where it's maybe not 100 laps, maybe I only do 10, 20 laps, but that's the same amount of time that I've spent practicing, right? What's the difference? And the answer is quite a lot, because you have gone through each one of the corners on the Nürburgring 100 times. If you've done the GP circuit 100 times. If you do the equivalent amount of time, which let's say it takes 2 hours, that's just the time that I'm going to throw out there. Let's say it takes you 2 hours to do that 100 laps. Well, if you took 2 hours here at the Nordschleife, you're only going to accomplish maybe 20 laps, and you're only going to see every single corner about 20 times. And as I mentioned earlier, you can forget where you're at on this circuit easier than any other track on the world, just due to the amount of nature of the corners. And that's not a thought that is far away from my mind at all times. These drivers, they don't need to worry about that again. They have done the hundreds of laps, especially here the Chris Hartveld's, the Scuderia Ferrari Esports team for SRO. I had the pleasure of talking with Mikhail Stechenko, talking about just how much he practices for these races. And in general, he practices for about 2 to 3 hours every single day. But when he's prepping for these SRO races, he's practicing upwards of 6 to 9 hours every single day. And that's every driver on the Scuderia Ferrari team.
Yeah, it's really one of those situations where you look at it, and this is basically their full-time job, right? I don't know about you, Mike, but I work in an office, all right? I'm there 8 hours a day, usually, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, you know, kind of flexing your time like that. And these guys, this is their profession. So, yeah, they're going to be focusing on racecraft and racing and practicing for that 6 to 9 hours a day, just depending on what all is going on. And some people, especially even in the silver category, this isn't their full-time job, and they still need to practice just that much.
Yeah, exactly. And an update as well on the weather. And the weather situation is certainly interesting. Any driver that thought that dry tires were the right idea, I don't think there were any. Let's just say it that way. The next 30 minutes, it is predicted to increase the rain by quite a little bit. You can see it looks like it's kind of died down since the most intense moments of the rain, but it is scheduled to intensify over the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, so that tells me if you're not already on the wet weather tires, you need to get on. We're starting to see the track is much more glossy, right? That's usually the big determining factor to me, is how wet the track is. It's just looking at those headlights and how much glare there is off of it. If it's a matte finish, it's obviously dry. If it's glossy, it's wet. It's getting glossier and glossier. You can start to see offline as well, sort of puddles forming, that standing water. That's how you know the track is really getting wet. And there is no dry line as well. There's a drier line just because the cars keep running there, but I would not say there is a dry line. So if you're not already on those wet boots already, I think you're going to want to stop and put them on. That being said, I don't know how many cars out there are not already on the wet tires.
Yeah, I think everybody at this point has elected to pull the trigger and come in for a stop. A couple drivers that I was looking at was, for example, Tinko Vandervelde and Eder, but I'm pretty sure that both of them, yes, they both have made their stops. Still, though, only a second and a half separating P5 and P6 right now. The 717 looking to make work of the Williams Esports team, but right now I would imagine they have absolutely no intent of handing that position over, does Tinko Vandervelde.
No, and it's one of those, it's very rare that you see the two cars that close where you're just kind of in sync with each other. We're looking at the 717 here just up the road. You can start to see that Mercedes hop into frame just before the camera switches. That's that Mercedes up there, that blue car. That's what this red and black BMW is chasing down. Noah Eder currently behind the wheel for that Team Nitro BMW, trying to see if they can't chase down Tinko Vandervelde just up the road by a little bit. Right now it looks like that BMW performing a little bit better in these wet weather conditions compared to Tinko, so I'd be curious how long it's going to take him to catch up, or if it's just maybe some camera trickery. But it looks like to me he's getting closer. It's not by a lot, it's just by a little. He's kind of chipping away as the race continues. Let's keep an eye on that scoring pylon, but for right now, between the sectors, so long here at the Nürburgring, we got about a minute and a half to just use our eyes visually to see if the gap is decreasing.
Yeah, the young Tinko Vandervelde, the 20-year-old sim racer out of the Netherlands, is looking to defend here from Eder in the new Team Nitro. I think one of the newest teams to the SRO grid. I think this is the first season that they did end up registering out there for the 717 machine. And what a championship they've had so far. Just looking at the point standings and where they're ending up is not quite the top 10 effort that they would have been liking, but for their first ever championship that they're taking part in, the Team Nitro, 11th coming into this right now at 43.5 points. Not too far behind the Mercedes AMG HRT team at 56 points. Right now, it seems that they will be finishing behind them, so 11th position is looking like where they're going to finish in the standings. However, still 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 35 seconds left. Anything can happen in racing, and it normally does.
Yeah, you talk about the 717 car. They've had a lot of speed, right? Especially looking back into the previous rounds. It's sort of a what could have been for them and a number of tracks and rounds this season where they're having a good race and then something out of their control just comes unraveled at the end. And I will say that they did have a decent run back at the Red Bull Ring. They were 4th there, so it's kind of the performance I expect to see out of this 717 car, kind of anywhere from about 3rd to the 10th position, right in category overall, really, for that matter as well. So they've done a phenomenal job, and I think this is a great foundation to build on for the coming seasons, and I hope they continue to come back and enter in this series.
Yeah, and you know, one of the other things that this car has to its name right now is it's tied for the quickest car in a straight line. 290 kph, the BMW is the fastest car out on circuit tonight in a straight line again by the pretty much no margin of measurement. Every single BMW is up at the top of the time charts when the rest of the cars are a little bit further down. The second fastest car is that 255 Aston Martin at 89 kph. Behind that, Michael Mooning in the Ford Mustang GT3. No surprise there that that car is 3rd fastest in a straight line. But beyond that, the Ferrari 296 looking at 8th quickest in a straight line. That's Amedeo Castorino in the 38 Ferrari at 288. Which again, you say 1 mile an hour, 1 kilometer an hour, 2 kilometers an hour. They're really not that much of a difference. But when we're talking about a 1.5 mile long straight, it can make the difference. That little bit of speed can make or break your overtake by the time you reach the end of the Dottinger.
Yeah, well, especially considering how many long straightaways we have here in the Nordschleife. There's really, I think, 3 long straights, right? You know, you count the Dottinger, you count the one in the back half of the racetrack, and there are some pretty decently long straights right on the GP circuit, and that's really going to help you a lot over the course of a lap time, right? And then over the course of 24 hours, so there is a lot of opportunity there if you want to try to trim out your race cars. We look now at Lucas Mattea, 10th place overall, leading silver car for Samantha Tan Racing Esports. Again, championship leader. We've talked about it a little bit here, but I believe we said the car that wins this race for the silver between those 4 cars that came into this race tied for the championship lead. Whoever wins the race also wins the championship.
Yeah, and that is what these drivers are fighting for, the prize pool at the end of the day here. And as it stands, the 28 is looking to take home the title with an extreme amount of hard work that they put in throughout the entirety of this championship. But right now, Lucas Meta is piloting that car to perfection, and they have done so for a long while now. Let's see here, Meta, I think, was the driver who has had the least amount of time behind the wheel, at least by the time I had left the booth at the 8-hour mark. But just taking a look overall, Vincent Goplet has been doing a stellar job behind the wheel, doing a couple double stints, but all in all, they've been having, looks like double stint after double stint. So Michael Mooning doing 2, then Vincent doing 2, after that Lucas doing 2, which is kind of the strategy that I've seen from a lot of the silver category cars. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Amedeo Castorino for the Coach Dave team, as well as Pranav Kalevala, the team principal of the Visceral team, and they both had a similar mindset when it comes to their pit strategies. And they say maximum of 2 stints. End of story. Maximum 2 stints. No driver is going to be doing 3, and that's strictly for fatigue reasons. You do not want your drivers to get tired out and to be making the uncharacteristic mistakes that you don't often see from them. So that's why you do the double stint, you allow them to drive 2 hours, and if they want to drive 1 more, maybe you allow that, but at the end of the day, the drivers have a stint schedule, everybody knows their place on their spreadsheets, and you follow that. And that's just the teams and how they organize way, way before we even come to today.
Yeah, and to be honest, right, in all my history of doing endurance races, 1 hour is 1 stint, right? 2 hours, 2 stints. Usually the most we'll keep a guy in the car is 2 hours. I've done 2 hours. Usually you get out of the car and you're feeling okay, but you definitely don't feel like you could do a third. Very rarely have I felt like I could stay in the car and do a third stint. And every time I've been forced to, just because the guy I'm handing the car off to is asleep or just can't make it right now, and I do that third stint, you get out of the car, you're exhausted. You start making some mistakes. You are never proud of that third stint if you stay in the car. So there's definitely a lot of reasons to maybe kick the driver out, put in a replacement right after the 2 stint mark.
Yeah, and the other thing that I alluded to a lot earlier, but back in my karting days, one of the things that can often happen is when you start to go out there in these endurance races and you're out there for 1 hour, 2 hours, upwards of 3 hours sometimes, you start to think about the little things that don't matter that much. You start to think, oh, my ankle is getting a little bit sore. Oh, my back, I got to readjust my positioning. Oh, I'm gripping the steering wheel too tight. My hands are getting sore. These are all little things that don't matter at the end of the day. You cannot be thinking about these things because they're just taking up mental fortitude when you need 100% of your brain power to be driving that circuit. And you need to, if your hands are hurting, grip the wheel less hard. As much as it sounds that simple, it is that simple, unfortunately. And you just get in your head sometimes and you start to overthink the task at hand, when in reality you just have to go out there and drive the car.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. It's one of those things where if you just focus less on driving the car, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go faster. And speaking about going fast, how about Pavlo here in number 6, silver car for VSR Christian. Back out here in the Lamborghini again, another one of those drivers kind of out there in his own world. He's got about 50 seconds to the car behind and 2 laps up to the car ahead, so kind of just out there vibing, right, as it were. So decent gap all around him, just putting in lap times at this point.
Yeah, and this team in particular has quite the lineup as well. I wanted to mention is back when Prawn was in the booth, he had made the comment that Jonathan Halema is I think a 14-year-old driver for that silver team and was doing an absolutely stellar job. Actually, he's put in one of the more commanding stints, I would think, out of all of the drivers in this field tonight. They're also, of course, they've teamed with Chuck out there, as well as Zimbel and a few others. I think it was Pavelchuk and Poznikov as well in that number 6 machine.
Yeah, it's always interesting, right? It seems like as you look at things, the drivers, even the fast ones, right, they keep getting younger and younger, and it's just mind-blowing sometimes. Oh, interestingly enough, the young machine, the 21 BMW in the silver category, in the pits disqualification, interestingly enough.
Yeah, that is interesting. Down 6 laps. That's a recent disqualification. I'm not sure what has happened there, if that was due to maybe over speeding in the pit lane, or if they had a penalty infringement. Maybe they had a stop-go 30 penalty, or driver stint time. Maybe it was driver stint time. That also could, I think, result in the disqualification.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can't find any sort of a reason for that disqualification from race control. I don't see anything. I'll keep checking. I keep you guys posted. But
yeah, interesting.
nothing so far.
Alistair Young came into pit lane after 7 laps, so made their stint, came into pit lane, and seems to have been disqualified on pit entry, is what it looks like. So my only thought would be speeding in pit lane, and you'd have to be pretty egregious to get disqualified for speeding in pit lane in that manner. That would have to be, you would have had to be in 3rd or 4th gear pretty much to not slow down in time for that, which I'm assuming everybody practiced their pit entry, but again, the disqualification there, hopefully we can get an update on that soon. And apparently we have a little bit of an update here. They have a bit of a driver swap bug, which is a terrible, terrible way to end up getting disqualified from a race. It seems that they had attempted some form of driver swap, and the other driver either wasn't in the server, or some form of issue has happened during a driver swap, and as a result, a disqualification has ensued.
Yeah, I was just going to say, looked like Muhammad was in the car live, right? Sometimes you can't always trust the scoring pylon there on the left side of the screen. Looked like they put Muhammad in the car, and then all of a sudden they were disqualified. So yeah, thank you, Mike Yao, director, for kind of keying us in on that. Very unfortunate for them, but that's just sort of one of the things that the gremlins will call, right? In real life, you have to worry about actual mechanical failures, and on the sim, we have to worry about different failures, right? Internet, power, computer, even hardware failures, right? We can have those too. So it's just one of those things where you really hate to see that from a competition standpoint.
Yeah, you really do, and that's never how anyone wants to end up beating their opponents. Is at the end of the day, you want to win, but you want to win in the most fair manner possible, and every single one of these teams out there, they all recognize each other and the hard work that they put in to be a part of these championships. They know what it takes, and they don't want to see cars get disqualified like that, because of course, that can happen to them as well, and nobody wants that to happen to anybody at the end of the day. You want to have a fair race, clean race, but you still want to win.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, right, it isn't just about winning by 1 lap. If you win by 1 lap, you want to win by 2 laps. If you win by 5 seconds, you want to win by 10 seconds. So you do kind of want to dominate, right? But you want to do that on your own accord. You want to do that because you were fast enough. You don't necessarily want the other teams to be slow. You just want to be lights out, blazing fast to go out there and dominate these races. So to have a team like that disqualified, it really disheartening for their team. And I hope they don't, they're going to take it bad. And I hope they don't take it the wrong way, just sort of out of their control.
Yeah, exactly. And there we look up at our P2 runner, who hasn't really had a sniff of Jordan Sherritt within the past little bit. In fact, it seems like the next time that those two will be meeting will be Jordan Sherritt lapping Aiden Walshingham at some point. I find that hard to believe, but with 156 seconds separating the two, it's not out of the question. Still, though, there needs to be an 8-minute gap for that dream to become a reality. So I definitely would not get your hopes up there within the next 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 30 seconds. But it's just been utter domination up at the top for the 255. And to be fair, the same could be said for the Samantha Tan Racing team, currently piloted by Lucas Meta. And we also have the Samantha Tan Racing team over in the Twitch side of things. So welcome there, cheering on their driver, currently piloting as cheering on their team, I should say, all of the drivers, as they have one more pit stop left to go before they reach the checkered flag.
Yeah, it's really, you know, they're about 30 seconds right away from being 3 minutes behind the leader. So I don't see them getting lapped anytime soon. I think the race would have to continue on for another 12 hours before they got lapped. But it is interesting, right, just how fast that this 40 car is going, and the 255 has still been lights out. I don't know if it's something they've got setup-wise in the car. That's why they're being so dominant. But I tell you, that Aston Martin, the 255, is on rails right now because they haven't made a mistake. They keep just banging out these fast lap times, and it's going to be lights out for them.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Austin wants another 12 hours added onto the race time. And I'm here for that, honestly. I'd love to see that. This race has been absolutely incredible. I'd love to see 12 more hours of these drivers out on circuit. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and we have 1 hour and 2 minutes left here before the drivers conclude an incredible championship here at SRO.
Yeah, it's hard to believe how long ago that this championship started, right? It's crazy how long this one lasts, and that the teams are committed to it, right? All the way through the season, and you say, oh, it's just a video game, why being that serious? Oh, it's a simulator. But B, it's racing, right? We're all passionate about racing. So yeah, you're going to be committed to it, and it's just awesome racing. All the way up and down through the field. It's phenomenal to watch, and I'm really thankful that this whole thing gets put together each and every year, because I absolutely love the Intercontinental GT Challenge from the Esports side of things.
It is absolutely amazing. And let's take a little trip here down memory lane while we don't got much going on circuit right now. There's about 3 seconds separating Eder as well as Tinko Vandervelde, and that's kind of the closest battle on track. But let's again take that walk down memory lane and just talk about the elephant in the room that is not here today. The number 86 team MSI. They were here at the start, but unfortunately a couple hours in faced a disconnect problem, and since the disconnect they just decided we're not going to rejoin. There's no point in making it to the end, as we have already secured the championship mathematically. The Scuderia Ferrari HP Esports team cannot overtake us. So the Mercedes-AMG Team MSI number 86 takes the victory in the championship standings, and what an incredible race they've had throughout this. Started all the way back in P7, I'm pretty sure, time and time after again, P7, P8, P10. Seemingly the qualifying for the 86 car has just been abysmal, but their race pace was unmatched. In round 1 at Suzuka, they took the race win. Round 2 at Spa-Francorchamps, they took the race win. Round 3 at Indy, not quite getting the hat trick, managed a P2, finishing behind the Automobili Lamborghini team, the 63, at Monza, or Indy, excuse me. Then as we moved over to the Red Bull Ring, they finished P2, second to the Scuderia Ferrari HP team, taking the win there in Spielberg. And then over to Monza, they managed to find the win there. Once again, round 5 for Monza was handed over to the Mercedes-AMG Team MSI team. An utter dominance it's been for them. Unfortunately, again, a disqualification for this race. They will not be taking home any points, but they do not need to. And the Scuderia team, an incredible effort for the 51. They, again, P2 finish in race 2, or in race 1. 4th, 15th, 1st, and 5th to their names, as well as a race win to the Automobili team. So those are the 3 race winners that we have so far, and we're looking actually to crown the 255 as their first race win in this championship. And we do have a little bit of an incident there. It's the 789 went off, but no harm, no done.
Yeah, it's interesting that in six races, right, we're going to have only 4 different winners, and hats off to the 86 team. They came out of here, they'd already won half the races, right, in the championship, and just like you mentioned, I wouldn't say it's abysmal qualifying, but it's certainly not what you expect to see from the team that's raced so well, but qualifies so, I would say, mid-pack, right, compared to where you expect the pro drivers to be. I'd say first to 15th or 20th, right, if all the pro guys qualified above the silver category drivers, about first to 20th, so mid-pack, right, basically bang on the spot for them. But whatever it is, they would always come out in race pace, and they'd always seem to avoid those bugs or those gremlins, sort of the bad luck, or if they had it, they would always overcome it. So, and this race, it kind of followed the same kind of, I would say, formula for them. You know, they qualified 7th. They kind of fought anywhere from like the 4th to 10th range through pit stops and different things with rain and that sort of stuff. And then overnight, yeah, just had that disconnect and basically just said, well, I guess we'll be done, right? You've already locked up the championship at this point. You're kind of just out there racing for fun. I was a bit surprised that they would kind of just give up the ghost and be like, well, I guess we'll just retire the car. Because I'm always one of those people. It's, you know, let's finish the race. It's an honor, it's a privilege to be in these races and have these situations going on, even if you do have bad luck and get a disconnect. But stay in the race, finish a thing, and just see where you end up, because there's always, you know, there could be some crashes, right, for other cars, stuff like that. So keep in it and see what happens.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and unfortunately they suffered a disconnect at a relatively similar time to the ITB Racing McLaren, who was leading the race. It was the ITB Racing McLaren leading to the 86 in second, and both of them faced a disconnect on around that hour 4 mark, and both of the cars electing not to return. Unfortunately, I would have liked to see the ITB Racing team especially rejoin and try to gain some points in the championship. Their best finish this season was 5th in race 1. Oh no, as that's Nikita there with another mistake in facing the wrong direction. Thankfully though, I think the hit to the barrier was relatively minimal. There will be some damage though to the rear diffuser, which will be affecting that Audi pretty tremendously. But all in all, I think they got away with that one.
Yeah, he did a good job to throttle up, put on the brakes, lock it down just a little bit to try and keep it out of the fence, or at least kind of slow down, right, that impact into the Armco barrier. Looks like he did a decent job of it. I don't see a whole lot of damage over there to that right rear side of the car. I think mostly body work if he did anything. And to be honest, these race cars in certain areas are very tough. Certain other more delicate areas, they're not as bad. Or not as strong. I think he's okay. I don't think Nikita banged up the car too bad, but that's definitely one of those things where it knocks your confidence as a driver, and you really start thinking about that and doubting yourself, and it's going to slow him down from here on out. You just see the rain, right? More standing water. We've been talking about how much that rain is going to play a factor into things, and it certainly has for the 789 punch.
Indeed, and another question in chat is if the 86-1, who is looking at second place right now? That's a great question, actually, is mathematically. So looking at the standings coming in, the Lamborghini team at 129, they are going to be not scoring an ideal haul of points. So the Scuderia Ferrari team, I'm pretty sure, will be ending up in... It's still hard to tell, though, because the McLaren, the Veloce McLaren number 40 has managed an incredible haul of points. And keep in mind here at the Nordschleife, we have double points on offer for these 24-hour races. So I'm honestly not sure. I'm curious if we can maybe get some maths done here and just to see in the pro category who exactly is going to be coming home in second there, as we know who is going to be winning the silver category, and the winner of the silver category is presumably going to be the winner of the race in the silver category, the 28 or the 276. Those are the two drivers that we're keeping an eye on for winning that right now. The 28 looking like they are going to hold that. And speaking as well of the 28, I just talked about the statistics on the pro side. Talking about the silver statistics here, the Samantha Tan Esports team, while yes, they came into this in 4th position, they have had a tremendous second half to the season. Ever since Red Bull Ring, P1, all the way around, Monza and Red Bull Ring P1s, they had a P21 finish in Indy, and before that, their best result was 3rd at Suzuka. But they're going for a hat trick of victories out here tonight, looking for their 3rd in a row.
Yeah, they've really turned up the wick in the second half of the season. Like you mentioned, out in Suzuka, they got a 3rd place. A nice podium there for them. Spa and Indy, nowhere even close. Not in the top 5, right? And then you look at Red Bull Ring and Monza. They swept both those last 2 races. So going for 3 in a row here, I'm not sure what they've done to sort of boost their performance in the last 3 races, including this one. But whatever it is, I like it, and I like to have some of it myself, please, because they've really been on something fierce. And on one hand, you love to see the domination. On the other hand, you like to see the parity. And we've kind of had both those things. 4 different winners so far in the 5 different races preceding this. The 28 car for the silver category is the only car that's won twice. And just as that, you know, we've had some other guys kind of be up there in the top 5 consistently. When you look at that, the 223 car comes to mind. They've been fast. The 711 and the 777 car have been kind of up there in the top 5 all season long. So you love to see that parity.
And another really interesting fact as well is Gladys Competitions coming into this race, technically leading the championship. Sure, they were tied with BF Racing Esports, but they don't have a single race win to their name, yet they still came into this at the top of the points charts. The silver category has just been an absolute knife fight in a phone booth this entire championship.
Yeah, you know, the 44 car, you look at them, the only time they didn't finish inside the top 5 was back in Suzuka. They have 4 out of the 5 races we've done so far. They've been in the top 5 for their category, and if you look at it right now, they are 5th, bang on the dot in their category as well. Again, one of those cars kind of out there in their own racing room. They've got about 50 seconds up to the 17 of Lee and about 16 or so seconds back to Magnani, just behind them in the 6th position. So if they can bang this 5th position out here, the 5 out of 6 races in the top 5, kind of crazy to think that wouldn't get them the championship lead, or the championship win rather, but you know, emphasis on winning, right, and how the points are being scored.
Yeah, and again, those double points races really helping out as well for these drivers, and that's really what's allowing the Samantha Tan team back into it. And we do have them in chat as well, so I'd be curious if they have any input on maybe what they are doing a little bit differently, as again, that first half of the season wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. It wasn't terrible for it to be considered, but the second half of the season has just been so superbly perfect. Something had to have changed. There's no way. But either way, we are down into our final pit stop phase for the Intercontinental GT World Challenge 2024. 51 minutes and 30 seconds left. Stint timer of 65 minutes. These drivers are pretty much green to go to the end if they would like to. However, as I'm just getting an update in my DMs here, we got rain predicted for 30 minutes. However, the rain is lightening up. Are we going to see another pit stop by the end, just purely off of the weather conditions alone? We very well may.
We might. I wouldn't rule it out. I would say, though, if the rain lightens up, part of it too is all these overcast skies. Luckily, it's in the daytime. We don't have as many cars around here, sort of all in formation. They're kind of one after the other, split apart by anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds. I'm curious to see what that would do to drying the track, but I would say about 20 minutes from now, maybe even almost 30, we're going to start seeing some drivers pit just because their stint timer is up, right? That maximum 65-minute time. I'd be curious to see how much lighter the rain is by then. Do you put on those slick, the dry weather tires? Interestingly enough, look at Castorino. He's kind of off there, not in the dry line, right? You look at that dry line, that's that kind of matte, that darker area over there, about 1 car width to the side of where he's running. So I'd be curious if, what happened to Luke Addison?
Oh no. Well, the aerodynamicist certainly did not draw the BMW up in this manner. It looks like Luke Addison has an unforced error in the Hudson box. Is that where he is currently? I think it is.
I think it's hard to tell. I'd be curious to see what happened on the replay. If I had to guess, I would assume he just lost the rear end and kind of lazy spin, nosed it into the barrier there. Don't see any damage on the rear end of the car, so that's what I'm going to put my money on if I were a betting man. I'd be curious to see what happened to Luke. Uncharacteristic error out of him.
And you can see as well, there's flashing of the headlights just off of getting on the accelerator. So with electrical problems and going to be facing the rest of this lap, he has no choice but to pit at the end here. And how long is it going to take him to lumber back to pit lane as he goes on through? Unfortunately, we don't get to watch that apex. I was curious if he was going to make it through Armberg, but yeah, as we saw there, I think that was in the Hudson backs that he might have just taken too much curb. That's a very common thing to do when you enter the Nordschleife or you come into that sector. It's a very deceptively slow sector from what you would expect. If you do end up taking the curbs there, you'll end up flying right into the wall. So it'd be interesting to see if we can catch a replay of that, but we see Lucas Meta here. He's actually going to be coming up to that point of the track here relatively soon. He's on the Nordschleife, or the Nürburgring circuit right now, getting ready to shoot himself up through the Schumacher S's towards what would normally be the Coca-Cola curve, but instead is the turn 13 that rounds you onto the Hotzenbachs that we just saw where that crash was.
Yeah, another thing that I think could have led to that mistake there for Luke is just getting on the power a little too soon. With these cars, they have so much horsepower. If you get on the car too fast, too soon, spin up that rear axle, it's basically just going to turn you into the fence, right? At any speed you're going, and it's one of those slow wrecks where you see it happening from a mile away, and you just kind of have to sit there, take it, pound the wall, and see what happens after that. Interestingly enough for him as well, I think the 789, having just spun out themselves, I think Oraziv getting right back up to the rear end of him, about 2.6 seconds away, according to the last time they went through the sector timing loops. And indeed, also, there was an update. That's right, as Samantha Tanner Racing Team in chat pointing out. So hard work and dedication for all 4 drivers has been it. So they've really been just getting the hammer down. And something that I forgot as well is over at Indy, they had that disconnect. So that was why they had that P22 finish over in Indy. Or a P11 or P21 on Indy. That was their dropped result. Otherwise, that would have been a P2, and they would have been walking away with this championship, I think, if that was the case. Holy smoke. Speaking of walking away, the back end there looking a little bit lively. Yeah, there's just, Mustang has all the torque in the world, right? American V8, especially in these wet weather conditions that we talked about too, turning down the traction control just so that Lucas can manage the throttle himself, especially the throttle response. And this is what I was talking about. It looks like Nikita has overtaken Luke Addison for position overall. And again, neither of these drivers are going to have their championship point standings affected, right, by that pass. Whoa, there goes Luke Addison again. Oh, what a save. He was dead sideways going through that corner. Monster save on his part. You see Nikita continuing to kind of scoot away in that Audi. Again, power plant over the rear axle, so a little bit easier to get onto the power out of these corners. And there you see Luke just barely coming into shot right here, going much slower than Nikita. That's just kind of showing you the disparity in performance that the Addison machine is suffering after contact with the wall.
Yeah, that is certainly not how the BMW engineers had drawn that car up. It is not the most showroom ready right now, and unfortunately Luke Addison will be pitting on this lap. to make it down to the end. At the very least, that'll be his final stop more than likely. With the rain continuing for the next 30 minutes and just lighting up, as you had mentioned there, we're not going to be seeing this track presumably get to a dry condition, I don't think, in the next 45 minutes. The sun not really poking out of the clouds, the rain just hitting the track too hard, and these cars not necessarily the best hoovers on the planet when it comes to moving stationary water out of the way. I think we are going to be seeing wet tires all the way down to the end here.
Yeah, man, look at the kid. I mean, he's been, I think, like, not full tilt, but he's been counter-steering through a lot of these corners, especially you can see him just wiggling, right, as he gets back onto the straightaway, putting the power down off of some of these corners. Kind of surprised he's using as much of the curbing as he's using, just because it is a painted part of the racetrack, and we always say it, any painted section, right, in the wet, way more slick than any of that just concrete or asphalt that makes up the track surface. And that's one of the things, thankfully, that you can experience in your road car. If you go out there in wet weather condition and try to put the power down on a painted section, and you'll see they're much more slippery. You can even experience that if you're walking somewhere in the city and it starts to rain. Just kind of stand there and try to wiggle your feet back and forth and just kind of move your weight. You'll see how much easier it is, how much slicker it is on a painted surface in the wet than just sort of on concrete or asphalt in that scenario. So just sort of a neat little thing you can do to just show how much slicker it is on one surface compared to the other. That's why in racing we say stay off the curbs or any painted section of the track once it starts to rain, because it is deadly. And man, Nikita, he's got a lot of counter steer in that car.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, if you do elect to decide to do that in real life, do be extremely cautious, please, because one of the reasons that causes you to spin is while it's very, very slippy on the painted side of things, as soon as you get to the non-painted side of things, your tires are going to grip up and they're going to throw you in the direction that you are facing. So be very, very careful regarding that. That is more than likely what we saw happen to the BMW, as we mentioned before, but who knows right now. And again, it's such an easy mistake to make when you're on these racetracks like that and those curbs. You can see avoiding them like a cancer right now is Nikita. He's absolutely no intention of taking the more serious ones. And even when he does there, you can see the back end stepping out. Now, of course, you kind of have to take that curve there to make the apex. But nothing getting in the way here of Nikita Orozev after his mistake on the previous lap. He's looking good to go for the next few foreseeable future. Let's see here. How long, in case, I'll take a check. How long is it until we see these drivers having to pit?
Probably about 25 minutes or so, and anywhere from that 15 to 20 minute mark, I think, is where we saw them last come down pit road to put on these wet weather tires again, the 65 minute maximum stint time. That's not just what, OSHA, for the drivers union, put in place. That is a team rule that they have, or a sanctioning body rule that the teams and drivers must follow. So you see Luke Addison on pit road right now, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, he's on pit road right now. There's not more than 65 minutes left in the race, so he does have the opportunity, right, to basically, this will be his last pit stop. So apart from the, Nikita really getting it sideways there, coming out of I think that was the Dunlop curve. For Luke Addison, not too big of a penalty that he's having to pay, other than the time he lost kind of getting himself sideways and spinning himself back around.
Yeah, certainly no harm, no foul. It needs to keep it between the mayo and the mustard. That's the goal at the end of the day, but with those wet weather tires, shouldn't be too much of an issue. I'd like to take a look up into 6th position right now, as the gap has come back down between Eder and Tinko van der Velde. Seems like 2.5 seconds now is the margin between those two, but they still are keeping each other at bay, or Tinko rather keeping Eder at bay for the time being. Still, though, would expect to see those two come to blows, or at least come into a little bit of racing, I hope, by the end of this race. And the battle for P5, I think, is firmly on.
It is, yeah. We continue to see that gap kind of get closer, stretch it out every now and then. I'd be curious to see when it was transitioning, right, from dry to greasy to wet. Really looked like the 717 car was quite a bit faster, but as soon as we now transition into fully wet conditions, I think Tinko van der Velde kind of has the advantage right now in his corner, I would say, of the boxing match as we look here at Aidan Walshingham in the number 40 car pro category, 2nd place overall. coming up to lap another one of the BMWs. I believe, I'm actually not too sure who that is.
I think that's Sherritt, no? Is that the Gladys? Or is that the... look, it is. I think that is the Gladys. I'm not sure if that's Sherritt.
I want to say it's probably Tuda in the 96 car, but I can't quite see the side of the car to see the number plate. But regardless, coming up to put him a lap down. Whoa, it goes for a spin there. Quick spin. Hopefully he gets it pointed in the right direction. A little bit of eating of the inside curb. He's going to have to be careful to get out of the way. It looked like there was another car just behind Aiden before they went in there. Unforced error.
Yeah, certainly was there through the carousel. Not the first time we've seen it. It looks like that might have been the 204 or the 224. I think that was Luke Addison, actually. Yeah, no, Luke Addison's just out of pit lane. I don't know who that was. 204. It was the 204.
It's the 96. Oh, was it the 204? Interesting.
No, that's a Porsche. What am I talking about? I think you're right. Or it's the 21. It might be the 21. I don't know. I'm not sure who that was. I apologize. You might be right there. I think it very well could have been. But the results are the same. And Aiden Walshingham, well, he gets by another blue flag. All the same.
Yeah, he really just got to the back end of that BMW, and then they made the passing opportunity really easy for him. It's one of those situations where you'd rather not be held up by a lap car, but ideally they just get out of the way and wouldn't spin out, because odds are his heart rate probably went through the roof right there, seeing that car get sideways, because sometimes he got lucky right there that the BMW went to the top of the carousel and didn't kind of come back down, lazy spin, and sort of clip him or block the track, because at that point, you know, you lose time. Not the worst thing in the world, right? You got about 44 seconds or something back to McKean in that number 89 BMW, but absolute worst case scenario, right? You smack that car, T-bone him, now you have to come down pit road for basically, you'd have to make that stop anyways, but the second half of the lap is going to be extremely slow.
Yeah, and then we've seen how much time you can lose after Luke Addison ended up with his incident, and it is the same exact situation that would be for Aiden Walshingham. There we go, though, into pit lane. We have our final stops underway right now, and the absolute Resitech by Acelith does elect to come in, get that damage repaired on the front end, and there is their sister car out on track, currently running in 27th position and 13th respectively for the 258. But the silver category leader, Lucas Mehta, Samantha Tan Racing Esports, utter dominance. I've said it time and time again, but they're looking to set this championship alight and show why they belong in the pro category.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many teams that are in the pro go down to silver, how many silver category teams go up to pro for next season. Obviously, depends on what drivers you have behind the wheel. Of course, the management, the setup guys. You know, it's not just 4 people, right, that are driving the car right now that make this whole operation work. But I like that back on the rear end there, that trust the process. Eventually, they're getting there in the championship fighting form right now, currently set to win the championship if the race were to finish how it is. 37 minutes left to go on the clock. I do expect to see a lot of the cars down pit road in the next 7 to 20 minutes, we'll say.
Yeah, as it stands, I think within the next 2 laps for sure for Lucas. He is 5 laps into his stint at 46 minutes into the stint timer. He will be coming in presumably sooner rather than later. I would rather, I think, like to see him come in on this lap. But I don't know. I need to see a weather prediction right now is what I would need to see, because the rain does seem to be lightening up a little bit, which was scheduled, to be fair, in the next 30 minutes, but it doesn't look like it's lightening up by much. So I'm curious if these drivers are just going to be trying to stay out as long as humanly possible. That way they can maybe get dry tires on. But I do not see that happening at this point. And if you do end up going for wet tires, wait a second. Leto is on dry tires. Hold up. Did I see that? I think I just saw a Pirelli P0 mark on the 276, did I not?
Let's see if we can get a side view here in a couple seconds. It has been sort of deceiving. You see a little bit of color, but not the kind of color you would normally see. I would have to say those are the wet weather tires. You see a little bit of that gleam on the sidewall. I can't imagine he's on
I think those are
slicks
dries
in this sort of weather, but he is sort of hanging the rear end out a lot.
I'm 99% sure that is that yellow Pirelli P0 that we see on the sidewall that is illuminating yellow as it goes around. Sometimes the rims can be deceiving where it's a full yellow band, but you can see the yellow band has a little break in it. I think Leto here is going for a gamble and trying to play the long card. And to be fair, it is going to stop. It's not going to stop raining, but it is going to lighten up in the next 10 minutes. And is it going to lighten enough to the point where dries are the valid tire? I'm not sure. And I have just had that confirmed as well. The 276 is in fact on dries.
Yeah, it's an incredible drive for Mateus. I'm surprised he's lasted this long on those slick tires. I think eventually the slick is going to be preferred, but I don't think it's going to be preferred enough where all these drivers on the wet weather tire are going to want to come back down pit road. However, everybody basically is going to be forced to make another pit stop here. And like you mentioned, about 2 laps, maybe at this point a lap and a half, so 10 to 15 minutes from now I expect to see everybody come down pit road, obviously depending on where they pit. But I think for the most part it got rainy enough about 50 minutes ago or so to warn all these drivers to put on the wet weather tires. So I'm kind of curious what Mateus does here.
Yeah, Mattea actually hasn't pit yet in the past 5 laps. Neither has the Samantha. So I'm assuming then the Samantha Tan racing team might also be on dries as well, which would be interesting. I'm not sure. I need to get confirmation for that one. But we have a mixed strategy here in these wet weather conditions. And your car can turn into a boat so easily with the stationary water on the Nordschleife. And even if it is just a sprinkle, the track conditions are brutal out there. And yes, they've had 24 hours of practice, but that doesn't mean that they won't make a mistake at the end of the day. And this is really what is going to separate the men from the boys tonight.
Yeah, I will say too, it looks like that dry air line is getting a lot more sort of matte colored, and most of the standing water, I would say, it's probably gone down by about 30% or so. You see some of the camera angles, there's not a whole lot of standing water in some of these places. So I think the track is getting dry, but it's getting drier at such a slow rate. I wouldn't expect a lot of these teams, or I wouldn't expect the optimal track condition before the end of the race, certainly not before about 10 minutes to go. So I'd be really surprised if a lot of these guys switch to the dry tire right now in anticipation of what's going to come later. But you know, as soon as I say that the sun will probably come out, the track is going to get dry, or all these teams are probably looking at more meteorology reports than I am.
And I think they're looking at more meteorology reports than both of us, because again, a lot of these drivers are still on dries. The Samantha Tan racing team is also on dries right now. Everybody up to car 38, in fact, is on dries. That is fascinating, to be completely honest. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, gutsy call for sure. I'm not sure how much I like it just because you're this deep in the race, but you know, these guys have enough talent to warrant doing that, and if they're comfortable with it, I'm all for it, man. Put it in the driver's hands.
Yeah, it's, I guess just if you're able to keep the heat in your tires, that's all that really matters. You have to wring the neck of the car so hard, though. And in these conditions, that's what causes you to spin, obviously, and able just putting more energy than is available into the tires. But you have to keep the heat up, as you can see there. Grip is at an absolute premium. And almost as I say that, what a save from Pozdenikov there. Wrestling an octopus momentarily, but he manages to keep it between the mayo and the mustard.
He did a phenomenal job there saving the car, and you can see it happening, right? Just got a little bit too wide there on corner X. It's really going to hurt his lap time because it's going to hurt the straight line speed down here, down the Donningham by a lot. But no harm, no foul. Save the car. Great job on his part, so it keeps that number 6 silver category Lamborghini pointed in the right direction. Look further in the field, Luca Gagliardini, the number 204 Porsche for Absolute Rest Tech, currently 26th overall. Again, one of those cars that's sort of just like those tires, right? Dry tires, what condition, been through the ringer. And I will say too, if you want to keep the dry tires on in this sort of scenario, you do need to keep the heat up in them, sort of getting on the power more, getting on the brakes, right? We talked about it earlier, brakes, you know, heat up the wheel, heat up the carcass of the tire, increase the temperature and pressure in there. But you can also just sort of leave pit road with the hyperinflated tires just to make sure that they stay in that optimal window. That's another thing you can do, where instead of completely just only relying on the driver to keep the heat in those tires, just give them a little bit more pressure in those, so it's a little bit easier to do that. Of course, that'll could come at a disadvantage later in the run when you're all of a sudden driving on balloons. And it looks like that 224 car came down pit road for the Genesis Esports BMW, but did not fix a whole lot of that gap in the hood. I'm quite surprised it hasn't started to buckle or anything like that, and no doubt it's hurting their straight line speed.
That could be a visual bug. I will give them the benefit of the doubt right now, because SRO Competizione does have an issue where every now and then when a car comes into pit lane to repair, it doesn't visually update for spectators. So I'm not going to say that car is damaged. I'm not going to say that car isn't damaged, because it does look very planted right now. So I think that might be visual, but it could have been another bout of damage, and they might not have repaired either. They might have thought it was good enough to make it all the way through. But the way that car is hauling, I think that is just a visual bug that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, let's see, I'd be curious to watch it for another couple corners just to see sort of the body language of that car, how much confidence that Abe has in it going through these corners, because when Addison was still in the car, it seemed like he had a little bit of confidence, and then if he had too much, or I would say the right amount for a non-damaged car, it would have been okay. Take a look here at Klopper in the number 20 car in 20th position, the RNL Raider there, Mercedes, for the silver category.
Doing a great job out there. The number 20, not quite delivering the points haul I think that they would have liked for the RNL Roar team. Their roar is heard. It's just a little bit of a faint one down into, I think, about 10th position in category, 20th overall. But one thing I do want to say is, now that we have about a half hour left here in this session, we're getting down to the winding moments here of the 24 hours of the Intercontinental GT World Challenge hosted by SRO. I just want to take a moment to thank absolutely everybody that has made this championship possible. Everyone behind the scenes, be it Ryan Gilg on production, as well as Mike Yao, Steve Proudly as well, helping out throughout the entirety of this. Of course, a big shout out to all of our stewards involved, Remco Ottens, Bjorn Rendard, Scotty and Stefan, as well as all of the other stewards that I'm not mentioning, as well as, of course, our mods, Omaris in chat, keeping everybody sound and check. And of course, just thank you to absolutely everybody for joining us, whether you are over on the SRO Motorsports side of things or on the GT World YouTube channel. If you guys haven't already, appreciate you guys. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and that follow button over on Twitch. And of course, a massive, massive thank you to all of our partners and sponsors here at SRO, including Fanatec, AWS, Pirelli, Kunos, AK Esports UK, SimGrid, AMG Motorsports, and of course our sponsor for Zynamic, providing some of the most incredible photography in any simulator that I have ever seen.
Yeah, I was going to say, you cannot possibly leave out Gary from Zynamic. He is awesome, does a great job getting us all the cool photos that you'll see periodically through the broadcast. I tell you what, AC is one of the most beautiful looking games I've ever seen in my life, and Gary finds a way to extract just that little bit extra realism to really make you wonder if the picture truly came from ACC or if it came from real life.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those simulators. I've said it earlier in the broadcast, I'll say it again. This is just one of those simulators that is just utterly beautiful. It looks realistic. When you go and you look at the thumbnails on YouTube, you say, is this a real life event or is this a simulator? I can't really tell until I click on it and have to watch it for a little bit, and typically what gives it away is the timing tower out of all things versus the graphics. So that's just the little things here, racing here on Assetto Corsa Competizione. It is an amazing, amazing simulator that we have for us.
And Mike, it looks like Fabio, shout out to him, has given us sort of an update of the driver standings coming into and currently in the race. So currently, yeah, the 255 obviously taking home the largest haul of points they could with 52.5, and then the 40 car, the McLaren Valache, 46 points added to their total. So I believe if the race were to finish how they're running, the 40 car would be second overall in the Pro Championship standings. And just like that, we look to see all the cars now coming into the pits.
This is the final stop of the night for these drivers, and Leon Otaki, is he going to stay behind the wheel, or is he going to hand it over? There's Tinko Vandervalt currently behind the wheel. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tinko make the finish here. I wouldn't be surprised to see Dennis make the finish either. Those are the two drivers that I would think they were planning for the end for the Williams Esports team. Everybody else, though, again, do you end up running your driver for the final stint? Who do you have? Of course, this has all been planned. Everybody already knows that in advance. We just have to find that out as the cards wind down. And this race comes down to its conclusion, which has been long awaited. 23 and a half hours in the making, and with 25 minutes left to go, as you said. Tobias Gronwald, Tobias Pfeffer, as well as Nicholas Huben and Michael Tauscher, all taking the win for the overall category in the pros, taking the championship at 190.5 points. No other driver in this race, no matter how good they do, can match that total. And the second place for the pro category is looking to be Aiden Walshingham, Eamon Murphy, George Boothby, and Luke Whitehead with the 51 Ferrari of Stetchenko, Riley, Hartveld, and Gillison behind in third.
So we're seeing a lot of cars come onto and off of pit road as you look here at Alexander Lee. And the number 17, BF Racing Esport, the silver category. Ferrari currently 14th position. Overall 4th in the silver category. Again, over on the left-hand side of the screen, you keep seeing the pits stop markers come up for different drivers. I expect to see the 17 car in this lap. I don't think they made their pit stop within the last couple or so. I'll be really interested to see how many cars have kept the wet weather tires on and how many teams are switching onto the slicks. You continue to see the racetrack getting drier and drier, slowly but surely. I don't think it'll be dry enough by the end to be optimal conditions. I think the closest we'll get is greasy, but it's that greasy area, Mike, where you start to kind of wonder, do we want to switch tires or are we okay with where we are?
Yeah, I think at this point, with the amount of time left in the race, you're just going to have to suffer, unfortunately, with your heated up wet tires if they do end up getting to that point, because you're just going to end up losing more time making a pit stop than you would out on circuit if you were to just end up biting the bullet and saying, yes, my tires are overheating, but I can manage them. Let me just back off by a couple percent. Maybe going 1 or 2 seconds slower per lap, but that isn't going to make the difference because you're looking at about a minute 28 stop here for tires and the full works service. Now, keep in mind the drivers probably wouldn't need to do so. They would just need to come in for a little bit of fuel. That'll be the main, I think, issue for these drivers. Tires in the wet, they don't get worn as much, obviously. There's not as much traction on the surface of the tarmac, therefore the rubber is not getting laid down as much, so you're not going to be burning through it until, obviously, the track does get to that dry point and it starts to overheat, blister the tires, and they start to explode, basically, from the outside in. But again, are we going to see that? 23 minutes, 24 seconds left. We will find out. A lot of these drivers, though, are still on wets.
Yeah, my mind always goes back to in some form of motorsport, maybe Shmor Lishman a couple years ago. I forget what race it was, but Lance Stroll was leading by a lot, and the team elected to pit him again for more wet weather tires, despite the fact the track was drying, and Lewis Hamilton ran him down with very, very worn wet tires because it just had the slightest little bit of tread to them, and he was getting a much better contact patch on those, and you would have figured Lance Stroll would have been much better on the fresh wet weather tires in a drying track condition. Not in the slightest, actually. So at this point, if this were real life, I would say just keep the wet tires on there and we'll keep going, just because at this point the track's kind of drying. You don't want a full wet, but you don't want slicks either.
No, and eventually, obviously, you often hear people saying that, well, eventually your wet tires will burn up and turn into dries. That isn't necessarily how it works, to be completely honest. It's kind of, for lack of a better term, we'll just say it that way. But it doesn't matter, because Conrad Saite, he comes in to pit lane. Did he make a tire stop? That's the question. Let's take a look here. Our race leader is now out. Jordan Sherritt has handed the car over, and the pit stop was about a minute and 12 seconds, so I think they did actually put on a fresh set of wets.
Yeah, I don't think they changed to the dry tires, otherwise we'd see a lot more yellow there on the sidewall of the tires. So interestingly enough, putting on that fresh set of wets, and to be honest, it might still be wet enough out there where you just want to continue it. It's hard to see from some of the angles of standing water in some of the racetrack, and we're never going to know, right from outside the car to inside the car, how much they're struggling with grip around the racetrack. And this is just kind of one handful of sections, right, of the racetrack. This is about, 16 corners maybe on the GP layout, and there's 80 overall for the rest of the Nordschleife, so hard to say over the course of the entire lap. But I think it's a safer option right now as well. You've got a huge lap, and you're just trying to bring it home with the race victory.
Yeah, and it is predicted to rain all the way to the line as well. It's predicted to lighten up, not be in this heavy of a rain, but it is going to still have a wet track at the end of the day. You can see that dry line forming, and that is going to be heating those tires up. You might be seeing these drivers taking alternate lines, maybe darting over to the wet line to try to keep heat out of their tires. But I don't think it's going to play too big a role. Again, Jordan Sherritt, who is not behind the wheel there, we actually saw that was, of course, the other driver that did get placed over for the finish. They took a new set of wet tires down to the end, and I predict that's going to be the case for a lot of drivers. But the one thing, though, if you're Bischoff, if you're Vandervelde, do you go for the tires? Do you maybe just say, you know what, I'm just going to go in for a set of fuel or a little stop here, splash and dash, and try to gain some track position overall? If you're Bischoff, that might not be a bad strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if it's more than the 10 seconds that you're behind the Vandervelde car right now, I think you go for it. Otherwise, I think it's a little bit of a risky strategy. Luckily, they've got about 80 seconds to Hartfeld just behind them in the number 51 Ferrari. So I'd be curious to see what they do with this 5 Williams Esports Mercedes AMG. We'll see what happens. I expect them to come in this lap because I think they're just going to run out of time on that driver's stint clock.
As I take a look, I think they did just pit. Yes, Tinko Vandervelde did just no, he did not hand the car over. He did elect to stay to the finish. Okay, that's what I would have thought. Yeah, a great choice there from the Williams Esports team, having Tinko Vandervelde take the finish, as they are, of course, one of the quicker drivers in that team, along with Dennis Schoninger. But everybody has shown that they have just incredible pace here for the Williams Esports number 5 car tonight.
I was going to say, it would help if I actually started to read the pitwall.live timing I have over here on my phone to see when they last pit and all that stuff. Shout out to pitwall.live, by the way, for a phenomenal app and working with us at AK Esports, because they do a phenomenal job getting all this different data. And for a math guy like myself, it is absolutely exceptional.
No, 100%. It is amazing. That's what's allowing us as well to dissect these pit strategies with Noah Eder and how he could maybe try something new, but Bischoff actually is behind that wheel. So they have also gone for their pit stop. So they didn't go for it. They went for tires. I think everybody elected to change tires, and looking at Leto, 54 seconds. So no, actually they did not. Looking at the 20, comparing that to the number 5, who did elect to take tires. It's hard to tell. A minute 12 seconds stationary compared to a minute, a little under a minute. I'm not sure. It's hard to, I think they did. I think the number 276 is on old rubber. So they tried for the strategy, and that is what maybe closed that. I think it was a 20-second gap before pit phase, and now it is down to a 10. And you can already see Tinko Vandervelde has pulled 3 seconds since I began rambling about this. So the tire advantage is certainly in the favor right now of the Williams Esports team.
Oh yeah,
aggressive line there.
Yeah, it's I would imagine that's what they did just for the strategy. Again, it's not just for a race win; it's for the championship overall. There's a lot at stake for this championship. So yeah, throw something at the wall, see what sticks to try and get you that position there for the win. And man, there was enough at stake where they could pretty much throw anything at the wall if they were in the second position, and I would say, yeah, it's warranted. You should go for it. It's worth it for the risk, and which is crazy to think, right? Esports competition.
Yeah, and especially at these high of levels, but at the end of the day, again, you have to gamble at some point. If not, what are you really going for? This is at this level, at a certain level of talent, luck and skill become indistinguishable. And that's the level that we're at right now, where sometimes you see these drivers do something, oh, that was a lucky save. No, that was a skillful save. Or, oh, that was pretty skillful. That was also pretty lucky. These drivers, they're just built different. To be completely honest, Amadeo Castorino, no exception to that title. Piloting the Coach Dave Academy car and doing a superlative job of it thus far. The 38 Cavallina Rampanti in the top 10 right now and looking to have a decent finish in terms of points, but not quite where they would have liked to finish this championship out. Their Monza race just unfortunately didn't go their way.
No, it really didn't. Luckily, though, for them today, they've been kind of steady Eddie here in this back half of the top 10. I think they got as low as 12th, I would say, for a bulk of the race. So 9th position for them. I just like how consistent they've been, especially, for the series, for this track. I'm just really proud of the run that they're having today, and I think they should be as well. Obviously, no, it's not what you want. Everybody wants to go out there and win. If you're not coming here hoping that you can win or wanting to win, I would suggest you don't even take the car out of the garage and just stay home, right? Don't even load it on the trailer, the transport, if you will, because if you're not trying to win, just stay parked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. Everybody out here has a winning mentality, and every single one of these drivers is a race winner. That's one thing that we often forget as well. We look at the lower down drivers and say, well, yeah, they're out of it right now. You got to keep in mind, these are still SRO silver drivers at the end of the day, and they had to work absurdly hard to get here. The amount of races that they've had to win, the amount of people they've had to get in contact with, and the networking required to become a professional driver is absolutely incredible. And every single one of these drivers out there have shared that, and they are all in the same boat at the end of the day when it comes to that, and they can share that. And that's one of, I think, the reasons that these drivers, while some of them, they may not like each other out, off track, they may not like each other on track, but at the end of the day, the mutual respect is there, and everybody wants everyone to do the absolute best possible. You never want to see disconnects. And you always want to win, of course, but there can only be one winner. And unfortunately, it's not looking like the Coach Dave Academy car for the gold plate or for the pro category. Again, it is that number 86 car that is not in the session tonight.
Yeah, unfortunate for them. Looking, though, at the lap times, the 255 is shared. He's been really on it, man. 8:52.1. That's the fastest lap time I'm seeing, so no surprise why they're up in the front. I will say, though, there's some 8:52s, 8:53, and 8:46 out of the 258 Porsche. Cardinale's hauling the mail right now. I'm not sure what he's doing compared to the rest of the field, but he is blazing fast right now, fastest out of anybody by a good couple seconds.
Yeah, and ever since they got that Porsche repaired, it's just been a blistering pace for them. Currently running in 13th position. You would think if they didn't end up with some of that damage they picked up earlier, they could have a shot here at a potential race win tonight. As it stands, though, 74 seconds off the back of Leon Burnt and about 80 seconds off the back of Leito. It's going to be hard-pressed to make up 80 seconds in 13 minutes. You'd have to be in a Formula One car more than likely to have that sort of pace, and even then, that might not be enough.
Yeah, they've definitely found themselves on the wrong side of the racing equation more than a few times in the race, which at Nürburgring 24 hours, you're going to have that happen. So to come home with still a podium position as it stands right now, phenomenal job on their part. But yeah, they're much faster, just not faster enough, I think, at this point in the race to go ahead and make that up. I will say the lap times are tumbling down. It looks like Castorino, he just put down an 8:38, so lap time is falling quite heavily at this point in the going. Be curious to see what'll happen. So you look at Seattle, obviously they just made their pit stops, a little bit of a slower lap time on their behalf. Looking here at Arthur Kammerer, number 89 pro car for BS Competition. They've been on it, man. This 89 car has been fast pretty much all day. And talk about, right, they started at the very back of the pack. I mean, it was for like the first 2 hours, they were not even close to where we expected them to normally be running in these races. Hour 3, hour 4, they start finally climbing up to where we expect for them to be, and they've been rock solid, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been utterly dominant from every single one of the BS Competition blue drivers, and it's been a real showing. You can see, though, hopefully that red bar next to the name of Kramer doesn't come into play. Obviously, that's just something that I'm keeping an eye on, as we've had a couple disconnects in this session, and knock on wood that Kramer doesn't experience that. He's good to go all the way to the end. He's made his final pit stop, and with 12 minutes left to go, he just has to make, well, 2 more laps, believe it or not. That's all we're going to be seeing at the end of the day. We're currently on lap 165, and we're looking for the checkered flag at about lap 167.
Yep, about 12 minutes left in the race. That's about a lap and a half here if you were to start at the start-finish line right now. So we'll see how many laps we have left. Looking here at the Samantha Tan Racing Esports, still got Gepelt in the car, still leading right for the silver category. They've in fact continued to pull out a gap there on later in the number 276 Aston Martin just behind them. Again, just a refresher in case you're tuning in or you just forgot. I'm forgetting for myself. We have 4 silver category cars, first through fourth in the championship, come in here separated by 4 points. So virtually whoever wins this race from the silver category goes on to win the championship. So far, that's the number 28 Ford Mustang for Samantha Tan Racing, doing a great job right here in the wet is Gepelt. They've been doing just a phenomenal job just managing the tires, the weather, just really excellent stuff out of these drivers.
Certainly is. And the 276 car behind, it's been, I don't want to say a bad showing, it's been a great showing to be completely honest, but it's kind of been like pushing 2 polar ends of a magnet together for them, because they've had the race win, or they've had the lead at a certain point in this race, and they've had it a couple times as well, but they just haven't been able to extract all of the pace at the end of the day that the Samantha Tan Racing Ford Mustang has, and only 15 seconds off the mark on the final few laps. It's certainly nothing to shake a stick at, but again, that just really is a true testament to Goplet and the team here at the Samantha Tan Racing and how perfect they've been driving. They have not put a foot wrong this entire race, and that can't even be said for our leader, to be completely honest. The 255 competition had a drive-through penalty at one point. It didn't matter in the overall standings, but it's just been utter perfection for the 2018.
Taking a look a little bit deeper in the pack, just by a couple cars, 15th place overall. That's the number 17 there. You see the Ferrari, and then we'll jump back up here to Malinowski. Another one of the Valache McLarens doing a great job. This is the number 39 entry, 8th place overall. And for Valache, it's kind of been a tale of 2 stories, right? They've had lots of speed, right? Look at the 40 car, look at the 39, lots of Valache performing dominantly, right? Or not dominantly, but very well. And then there's been some Valache cars in the bottom of the standings just having some rotten luck in the earlier going to this race. So on one hand, the Valache side, excellent finishes, excellent runs. You can be very proud of that. On the other half of the side of Valache, just not quite where they want to be performance-wise.
Yeah, and even for their qualifying, just looking back to the number 39's qualifying in this race, they qualified in 15th. You know, not where they would have expected to be. They qualified behind 5 different silver plate driver, 5 silver plates. And in that pro category, now obviously, it's still a mixed bag when it comes to the pace, and that just goes to show you how quick the silvers are at the end of the day. But that wasn't, the qualifying they would have liked with Milanowski behind the wheel, but since then it's been a solid recovery drive, managing into the top 10 for right now. 8th position is where they lay at the time right now. But the number 40 McLaren, the Aidan Walshingham team, with Eamon Murphy, George Boothby, and Luke Whitehead, they qualified in 9th. It wasn't the greatest qualifying for them either. In fact, the highest qualifying McLaren was that number 7 that unfortunately disconnected. But the 40 car, my goodness, they have just found blistering pace and managed to pretty much transition their quali pace over into the race session. Utter dominance and into 2nd position at the end of the day.
Taking a look, pretty much mid-pack in the field, right? We've got Hop here in the number 80 car, the sole NSX in the field. Obviously not out there trying to fight for a position, just kind of riding around, but this is what you'll have happen in these long races where the field gets very spread out. You're kind of fighting with other drivers not next to you in position, sometimes not even next to you, or not even in the same class as you. So he's got another Mustang just up the road from him. Thinks about being late on the brakes, almost contact being made there, just trying to be aggressive with making up time. Forced to kind of sit back there right now. Looking to get the white flag here pretty soon. Depends where the leader is, but we should get that coming up pretty shortly here. 7 minutes left in the overall race. Leon Lee looked like he was trying to chuck a move up the inside, not quite making it. He's got the position now. Be curious to see how hard this 104 fights. I don't know how much they've got left at stake here versus, whether they let this 80 car pass or not.
Yeah, the Myrtle Motorsports, one of the fan favorites out there, the Honda NSX. Oof, a little bit of a hip check at the apex there, but the Myrtle is going to make it through, and the 104 is going to have to just contend with that for now. Our race leader is currently, by the way, in Sector 7 through Whipperman and into Brunchen. down, getting ready to head towards that second carousel, towards the Dottinger. So we will be starting our parade lap within the next couple minutes.
You can see there's quite a little gaggle of cars going on there. The Middle Motorsport looking to overtake another one. Whoa, a hip check and another. Geez, Aston Martin going spinning. I think that might have been, what is that? Oh, the 201. Yeah, we just saw them on pit road not too long ago. That's Luca Magnani back out onto the racetrack. I wouldn't be too surprised here if we maybe see some sort of a penalty coming for that middle car. 2 hip checks in a row like that. The first one I can kind of understand. That Mustang was kind of holding their line a little bit fiercer, not giving them a whole lot of room. But then Aston Martin, the hip check, I'm not so sure how I feel about that one.
Yeah, certainly. It's a very aggressive move, but the job was done. All tracks do remain on circuit, and you can see that Mustang slipping back now immediately as they go through the first sector of the Nordschleife. And behind that, I'd imagine the car is going to be wanting to make do relatively quick, the Aston Martin there. But now, as we are going to be looking at up to the top here, this is Nils Klinkmuller, who was having a scrap very, very early on with the number 7 driver, as well as Romanelli in the 164. Battling a lot of different drivers with connection issues, but Klinkmuller has prevailed and managed to make it all the way to the end. It's not going to be a podium finish for them, but the team HRT, Mercedes-AMG Esports, looking for a 4th for the number 4. Some say that's fate, others say it's a curse. Honestly, I don't really know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I can kind of go both ways on it, right? It's one of those things where, flip a coin. Maybe that's how I'll feel, depending on the day. But, man, Niels has done a great job. This entire Ford team, right, it just kind of shows you what you can have happen if you persevere, right, through a race. They started well. They kind of fell back to kind of the fringes of the top 10. They had some disconnects. Some unfortunate things happened for some of their competition. Obviously, they were able to take advantage of that, and they've been just on it, right, ever since then. Got themselves locked pretty well into the top 5 here, and I just think another one of those results right throughout the entire season that you as a team can be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that everybody can be proud of in this race, if they are still in it, is we have reached the final lap of the 24 hours of the final race, the first time SRO has donned the Nordschleife cap for Assetto Corsa Competizione. And 24 long hours later, we're reaching that conclusion. And Saita in the 255 competition team is on the final stretch. 15 miles ahead of him and a parade lap that he's going to remember, I presume, for the rest of his life. This is one of the most important laps out there. And what a drive from the 255 again. Look at it. There it is, the brilliant livery. Very colorful, the Schumi skins there. Going around the Nürburgring circuit, getting ready to enter the Nordschleife, and behind him, some might say that's pretty fitting, because guess who that is right out of shot?
And how about this view here? All the different drivers we have on their in-car cameras, we'll call them. I absolutely love how we do this, right? To get the drivers, and then you get the view. It's just fascinating to see how committed they are, right? How focused they are on the driving, what their kind of sim rig setup is. But yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because we have our 2 class leaders kind of right next to each other in the pro and the silver category. There goes the Aston Martin for 255 competition. And if we stay at the shot long enough, you'll just see the Samantha Tan racing car come into shot as well. It'd be very cool. I wonder if they're kind of communicating with each other. Maybe slow down and we could have some sort of a finishing formation here for the end.
That would be picturesque, and I think Gary from Dynamic would be losing his mind if that was to happen. We'll see if we can make that become a reality. Obviously, there's nothing we can do. It's down to the 255 really to slow down and potentially allow that to happen. But yeah, look at that. We see some of the drivers that I recognize. Looking at that Ferrari Esports driver, that's going to be, I think, Jonathan Riley behind the wheel. No, it's going to be Chris Hardeveld, I should say, I think, behind the wheel there of the Ferrari Esports team. We also have next to him, that's Tinko Vanderveld in the glasses. Beyond that, it's hard to see, it's such a small screen. A couple other drivers that I recognize. The top left driver, that's George Boothby, if I'm not mistaken, with that triple monitor setup out there. So it's super cool to see everyone in the different setups they have, the different streaming kind of platforms that a lot of these drivers have, as of course you can catch them live on Twitch yourselves. I know George Boothby is one of those drivers, and quite a few other ones out there tonight. The likes of Jaroslav Honzik as well, of course. Jardier was in this race as well for that, was it the number 39 team? I think, yes, the number 39 team, I think, for Jardier.
Yeah, I still can't get over how much that one guy looked like a pink desk chair, but maybe that was just me. I'm not going to insult how he looks. I guess that's the genes he got from his parents, but they might look an awful lot like chairs as well. But man, how about it? Like you mentioned, though, this is going to be one of the best laps of your life, right? If you're these two leaders here, because it's basically you can go at your own pace. You have such a huge lead, especially for Seattle. For Goppel, you kind of got to be a little bit more worried, right? Only 16 seconds back to the competition, but at this point, man, I mean, you could practically go down a cylinder in real life and you'd still be just fine for the course of the lap. But Seattle, man, he could really stop for like a minute and a half and then decide to keep going and still win the race. They've been absolutely dominant here today.
Could have a nice little picnic on the side of the Dottinger and see some of the cars drive by. Heck, you might even be able to watch some of the higher runners in the top 10 drive by, as he's managed to lap so many people, which is just absolutely amazing. And also, I was wrong, and I knew I was wrong as I was saying it, which is the worst part. But Aiden Walshingham was the top left. George Boothby was in the middle. I knew that. I just didn't. Yeah, anyways. Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. How about that?
Works for me, because to be honest, I'm right there with you, and it's very difficult sometimes, right, to recognize those small faces, and I feel like a lot of it too is you associate certain things, and all it takes is one kind of slip up of the brain to make you think, oh, that's something else, especially when you have a lot of self-doubt, right, behind the side of the broadcast. But man, Conrad, I don't know. It looks like he's still on it. I'd be curious how much he's still pushing that car, but it doesn't seem like he's going any slower like he has any other lap. And I think that's important too, right? You say you tell some drivers to slow down, and sometimes that incorporates mistakes. So at this point, right, he's been comfortably at this pace for a while, so you just want to be comfortable for the rest of the run, and that's just what he's doing. So whatever he's been doing, whatever he wants to do, you just let him keep doing that for the rest of the race. He's only got one more lap, and in fact, we're completely out of time now. You see the 24-hour clock has gone down to 4 zeros there. So again, white flag is out. This is it, man.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Conrad Saita is not backing off. He's not letting down, and he has no intention of getting us that photo finish that we ever so desire. He's going to be taking this one all the way to the checkered flag, going through the middle of the track right now, the first carousel. And he has about 7.5 miles left to go before we reach that checkered flag. And again, a massive thank you to everybody behind the scenes, everybody here that is joining us over on the Twitch and the YouTube side. If you guys haven't already, again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, the follow. If it hasn't warranted it this yet, then, well, I don't know what has. Saita here, dominant as ever, and there is the man himself. Look at that, you can even see. That is the face of a man who is locked in. They do not want to put a foot wrong, despite the fact that, as you mentioned, they can park up for a good while. They can have a mistake right now. They've ended up with enough of a buffer to warrant that, but still, Saita is locked in as ever and willing to take this victory for the 255 competition team.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point where we saw him locked in, right, like 20 hours ago or something, and you could see all the sort of micro adjustments in the wheel, how locked in he is. He's practically white knuckling the steering wheel. At this point in the race, you know, this is the last lap. He doesn't need to be driving this hard. I mean, he could be driving easily enough to just sort of one hand on the wheel for shifting, I guess, if he could, and just sort of more lax, right? One sort of wheel movement, more flowing, more solid, right, per corner, and he's still just as locked in, all the sort of micro adjustments. You can still see that car dancing around the corners, how much he needs to do that. I mean, look at that, kind of full tilt counter steering the car right here. Wet conditions certainly helping that sort of counter steer or necessity for counter steering, but man, this is crazy.
He is milking the cow on the last lap, and now, as it stands, he's going to be coming into the final carousel. Holy smokes, he bottoms out there, and You can even see on his face, blink of the eyes right there. That was a bit of a scare moment that we are just going to pay absolutely zero mind to, because besides that minor mistake, it's been dominance the entire time, coming down the last 1.5 mile stretch. This is going to be the first race win for the 255 competition team in this season, and that is going to be enough to put them into 5th position overall in the standings. The team at the wheel is, of course, going to be the likes of, obviously, Conrad Saeta. Alongside of him, though, his teammates are going to be, of course, Jordan Sherritt, Jordan Sherritt, Abuladze, as well as Philip Minar. And here we are, the final corner complexes, coming now into the little bit of the twisty bits and onto the official GP circuit. Conrad Saeta, the 255 competition team, on lap 166, comes across the line to take the final race win for the Intercontinental GT World Challenge, and a fist pump and a number 1. Well deserved for the Polish driver and the 255 competition team. George Boothby is going to be coming home in second, but here we are, the new champion of the silver category, Vincent Goplet, and the Samantha Tan Racing Esports team, the number 28. It's a very stoic reaction as Vincent here trying to take in, I think, the emotions, but the checkered flag has fallen and the championship is settled. Samantha Tan Racing team at the top.
Man, how about that for them? The highest of highs and the lowest of lows for the drivers that win and the drivers that lose. Definitely a deserving race winners and champions there for the Samantha Tan Racing team. Surprised we can see a little bit more emotion there out of the 28 driver, but man, Conrad, you can finally see a smile on his face. It's probably the first time I've seen anything but just determination out of his face so far. But you look at George Boothby, he's in finally the second half of the track, sort of the more flowy bits, we'll call them.
And looking here to finish in second position, not just in the race, but in the championship as well. Aiden Walshingham, Eamon Murphy, George Boothby, and Luke Whitehead in the McLaren 720 Evo 2 for the McLaren Veloce Vext team. Going to be taking home second overall in the standings behind the 86 AMG Team MSI that is crowned the champion officially. Tobias Gronwald, Tobias Pfeffer, Nicholas Hauben, and Michael Tauscher take the championship here tonight. There's George Boothby. You can see it's a stoic look on the face here of the Veloce Vext driver, but at the end of the day, I think a P2 is still a welcome effort for this team. They put the work in, and they've managed to finish ahead of the Scuderia Ferrari Esports team, Mikhail Stetchenko, Jonathan Riley, Chris Hardeveld, and Isaac Gillison for a P2, and a nice salute from George Boothby. Not only is he saluting his team, he's saluting, of course, here you guys in chat, the ones that are, of course, making it possible, and everybody in his career that has made him to get to the point where he is. Saluting his chat, of course, as well, and what a drive it's been from the Veloce Vext.
Yeah, phenomenal drive for them. You know, you talk about the run they've had all season, kind of up and down, but to come away with P2 in the championship standings. You look at, they finished on the podium in Suzuka, they finished at the top 5 at Spa, 4th in Indianapolis, they were 8th at the Red Bull Ring, and 2nd at Monza, right, so close to the win there, so they're second place of the season. So just hats off to them. Phenomenal job. You see George Boothby. I think that's the most excitement we've seen out of anybody on the camera so far after they finished the race.
More of a sigh of relief, it seems, as he is more just relieved to make it to the line. And Aiden Walshingham takes home second position, and it looks like we have Martin Walshingham in chat, which is his father. So thank you so much, Martin, for tuning in. Proud of his son and giving him a little bit of love. Thank you so much for doing that. That was really appreciated. Arthur Kramer here to the line in the BS Competition Blue. What an effort it's been for them as they managed to finish home on the podium at the end of the day. In terms of points, though, for the number 89 team, they are going to be in 8th position overall for Gregor Schill, Felipa Bokita, Arthur Kramer, and Nils Naujix, taking home, again, that 8th position for the 89.
How about this second half of the run here from Abe Santema, the number 224 Genesis Esports BMW for the silver category again. Not quite the last hour they would have wanted, but no harm, no foul. Going to come home in 19th position overall, just barely right outside of the top 5 by about a spot or two. Good job for them. Really nothing not to be proud of in this whole situation here for the 24 hours, season long especially. They haven't always been right up there with the best of them, but they've been kind of, close enough to always have a shot at what's going on.
Yeah, and to be fair to all of these drivers out on circuit, they all deserve to give themselves a pat on the back. Just reaching the checkered flag is a victory in itself, and especially for some of these drivers, this is their first ever SRO season. I know the number 6 car, they have some young guns out there, under 15 years old for some of them, and just making it to the checkered flag and participating in their first ever SRO championship means so much to some of these drivers out there. And while Abe Santema, yes, he's been around the block, he's a driver that we know the name of quite well, he's not going to be the most happy with a 19th finish, but at the end of the day, it's about the journey, it's not about the destination, and he has a few more corners left to go before rounding onto the Dottinger before he ends up finishing this 24-hour race.
Yeah, that's one of the weirdest things about the Nordschleife, especially when you run into most tracks. From when you get the checkered flag to fly, you got about 2 minutes, maybe tops, right, before everybody is crossed the start-finish line and we're done. But here, with just how jumbled up it is, and the fact we're at the Nordschleife and we're in the rain, right, you got about 8.5, 9 minutes from when the checkered flag falls to when the final car crosses the start-finish line, and that's just always, it's weird, and it's so unique about the Nordschleife, and to be at this track, right, the first time SRO Esports for the Intercontinental GT Challenge has been here in ACC for a 24-hour race. It's exceptional. Glad to be a part of this broadcast, everything that's going on here, and how about a shout out, right, to all the other commentators. I think we've had a lot of trials and tribulations just trying to get this to come out, with people sort of missing the broadcast entirely due to family obligations and stuff like that. But man, it's been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Big shout out, of course, to you, Austin, as well as to Ewan O'Leary, to Jesse Lee, who unfortunately couldn't make it, David Addison, of course, putting in a stellar stint with Ryan Gill on production, Aiden Millward also joining the likes of David earlier, John Dalton as well, and Pranav Kalavala as well, the team principal of the Visceral Esports, giving me a little bit of company in the midnight stint earlier. And I've been Mike Noss, of course, I suppose, and of course, Austin Bullock alongside me tonight. Austin, what an absolute race. And it seems here we are going to be getting some interviews relatively soon. Here, though, before we get into that, here is the number 86 MSI car, the race leader, and all of the brilliant photos provided from Gary at Zynamic, one of our amazing sponsors that we have here, and just telling the story of this incredible 24 hours. Again, it's the 24 hours because we saw the 86 car, which unfortunately disconnected, and as the night fell and the Ferris wheel illuminates over the skies here in the Ardennes region, what a brilliant circuit, and the fans frozen with excitement this entire session. But as we have it here, we do have our gold plate, or rather our pro drivers joining us here tonight. We have Jordan Sherritt, Lucas Mehta, as well as everyone else. How are you guys doing?
All good. Finally, the race is done. It was long and hard and tiring, but tired.
It was a hard-fought effort all the way through. What were some of your trials? What were some of your tribulations that you guys faced going through this? Because just to be completely honest, from an outside perspective, it was a bit dominant. You guys were flying. What did you guys do differently than everybody else tonight?
I think, to be honest, our car was very, very fast, especially in the mixed conditions. So, it made our life a lot easier. And obviously the Aston being front engine and normally known to be good in the wet and dry and the mixed conditions, and with the current bump we had, all we had to do is literally just keep it on track, and our pace just came, And yeah, so we just pushed and tried to not have many mistakes, and yeah, that was that race. It was I think it was a good team effort from everyone, which was cool to see. And finally, we actually got a win. You know, we've been there but not there, and finally we put it all together. And yeah, the result shows.
And with Saita, the fist pump at the line, the reaction, I think, said it all. The hard work, the dedication that you guys have put forth into this championship to take the win at the final race of the Intercontinental World GT Challenge. While, yes, you guys did not end up winning the championship, and at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure you guys will be finishing somewhere around 6th, if I'm not mistaken, before all, of course, penalties are assigned. But what a championship. You mentioned it's been a tough championship overall for you. You've had some discounts, you've had some issues over the course of it, but this race, you guys had a stop-go 30, and it didn't even matter. There was no even contention with that stop-go 30. Was there anything that crossed your mind at any point, Philip?
Not really, to be honest. I think for this whole race, I think all 4 of us were so dialed in with this car and the setup, and I think we had one clear goal in mind, that was, well, to win. And yeah, it was a hard task, especially starting from last and having that very interesting first stint and all the chaos. But yeah, after this whole season, I'm just so happy. It's a bit of a bittersweet feeling, because we've had such a terrible run at Spa, and we just didn't have we just had an interesting race at Red Bull Ring and Suzuka as well, and finally to get a win here, it's just insane. I just don't have any more words about that, to be honest.
Not only the win, but to be fair, Abuladze taking home the fastest lap, not once, not twice, but 3 times they managed to set the fastest lap over the course of the session, holding the 3 fastest laps. Abuladze, how does that feel? I mean, just showing that you were the quickest driver out on track.
I'm jumping in here for Vyacheslav because of a language barrier, but I can't say anything else, but it's been a pleasure to drive with him, especially now when we worked for Nords. He has been the benchmark and will probably be the benchmark on this track for many months to come until we do changes to the game. So it's just been an amazing driver, especially when it was the wet conditions. I've never seen anyone be as dominant as he was during the wet stints.
No, seconds quicker than anybody else over the course of lap after lap after lap. It was unprecedented. And of course, last but not least, I won't keep you guys too much longer. Saita, I mentioned it. You were the one that crossed the line. You had the fist pump at the very end. What were your emotions when you were going through those final corner complexes and onto the GP circuit?
It means everything. Like, with these guys, everything was easier. And yeah, we finally made it. The season was tough. Actually, I had taken part only in 3 races, but this was unique. This was the different one, and this was the hardest. And it was a pleasure to be part of it. So yeah.
Well, absolutely amazing. The 255 competition team. Before you guys move on, is there anybody that you guys would like to thank for your efforts here tonight?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, obviously I would want to say thanks to LFM, because obviously 2.5 competition is basically run by LFM. Obviously Fred, the team manager, always does a great job. Slava this weekend, this track is absolutely insane. I've never been like starstruck in how one drives in perfection, and it was a pleasure to drive with him, especially in this race. And yeah, just thanks to all LFM sponsors, and yeah, thanks to my teammates and you guys, of course. Obviously this would not be possible without you guys and the team behind it. So appreciate all of you guys.
Thank you very much. The 255 competition car, your race winners tonight. P6 in the championship. Good luck in your future endeavors, guys, and congratulations. Soak it in and enjoy the rest of your evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in this fine world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
you guys.
Now, as we have it, we're going to be moving on to the silver category, and I think, Austin, you've had a chance to catch up with some of our silver drivers.
Yeah, go ahead and get these guys into the booth. Gentlemen, first off, a couple questions on my side, but what's the emotion right now? The ecstasy, I would assume, winning the race and the championship, I would imagine, just on top of the world.
Yes, yeah, it's good. It's for me. It's back to back for Vale and Michael and Marco. It's first time, but it's good. It's very good. For me, I wanted to win the race on the track, but yeah, we made some mistake. We were second, and the P1 in silver disconnected, and they just handed us the victory. So yeah, it's not that enjoyable, but it's still we are still enjoying it.
Definitely glad to hear. If I could ask, what was probably the most challenging or daunting thing about preparing for a race like this? I mean, it's not every day. You have to prepare for a 24-hour race, and even then, not every 24-hour race is around the Nürburgring and the Nordschleife.
I mean, I expected a little bit more dry track, to be honest. And yeah, it was the bob changed, so our setup we made Friday evening wasn't really working on Saturday anymore, so that was a bit challenging. And yeah, then of course the change of the weather, always driving with dry tires on a wet track, or yeah, was very difficult, but went all good in the end.
Yeah, so I'll go back to that question then. What were some of the changes that happened to the BOP? What did you change to the car to kind of maybe adjust it more so it was more comfortable, right, with the BOP changes around this track? Because I would imagine it's one of those places where every time you try to adjust the car in one area of the track, you make it just a little bit worse in other areas.
Yeah, it was just a little bit oversteery after the bob changes, so we made it a bit safer. Yeah. Just a few tweaks, so nothing major.
Excellent. And then last question I have from my side, just about the race and your guys' season and stuff like that. If you could go back to, what changed, right? Your guys' first three races, I mean, granted you podiumed at Suzuka, but Spa and Indy, you guys were kind of off compared to the last two times out, Red Bull Ring, Monza, and even today. I mean, you guys have swept the last half of the season. What changed between the first and second half?
I think that I think that the guys really just put their heads down. They really just went to work. We had some pretty poor luck at Indianapolis, being in P2 for the first half of the race and then getting, a disconnect. But that's kind of the things that happen here with sim racing. You have the mechanicals, IRL, and, we had that. So, from our side, it was just keeping our heads down, focusing on, race by race and achieving the maximum. And I would say that, Valet, Marco, Lucas, and Michael, they achieved the maximum that they could every single time they stepped into the car. Being a team manager and watching them was extremely, just extremely proud of all the work and how well they all work together. And, it's all down to them and taking it race by race from there. And I think the last three rounds and their speed is really a testament to everything that they did this season.
Well, and I think I'd also chalk up to the fact you guys came in here, and I would assume you guys talked about it before, but Lucas is going to take the first one, Valley took the second question, you, Cameron, took the third one. I would assume you could also contribute to stuff like that coming in with the game plan. But my last question to you guys, and I'd like to hear a couple things from each of you guys, shout outs you want to give, people you want to thank for both the win today and the championship win in general.
For sure, firstly, our fourth driver, Marco Moninger, who couldn't race with us the past two races, but he still contribute. He still made the setups for us. He was still part of the team, even if he doesn't really need it to be. But he still made the effort and made the setups for us. So that's big thank you to Marco.
And of course the whole team supporting us. Big thanks to them.
Absolutely, and I think, Samantha's been watching. She's been extremely supportive of this whole journey, and I think, having the parity between real life and esports, and, seeing our guys be at the top level and just working so hard. And, I have to thank all the drivers for their hard work, never giving up. And, I really have to support Samantha, John Miller, and Victor and everyone over at the Samantha Tan Racing team for really believing in us. And I think this achievement, I'm extremely proud, and I think all the drivers should be. They've really deserved this, and thank you guys for putting on this series. It's why we keep coming back.
Well, thank you guys all for your time. Congratulations not only on the win, but the championship. Really appreciate getting the opportunity to talk to you guys. So cherish these victories, and hopefully we see you guys just as dominant for your guys' sake next season.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, all right, Mike, there you have it. I always love getting the opportunity to talk to these guys just after they get the opportunity to win on probably the biggest stage, right, in esports and in simulatory racing, and ACC is a phenomenal platform to do it on. So it's just awesome to be part of these opportunities and hearing these moments for them.
Absolutely. I was expecting some more emotion. Maybe they just haven't soaked it all in yet. That's the excuse that I'm going to make from them, is they have just won the silver category of the SRO Silver Championship. I mean, in 6 races, that's such an absolute accomplishment. They sound really like they expected it, to be honest, which I mean,
like
hey,
they do this sort of thing every day.
case,
Like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
We just backed into this one totally. We didn't even mean to. It's fine. But no, I mean, they drove that thing, man.
No, absolutely. They absolutely crushed it this race, and congratulations. Hats off to the 255 as well as the silver category. But as it stands, that's going to do it for us tonight, folks. Austin, first off, thank you so much for keeping us company here. As we had one of the most entertaining closes to a 24-hour session I think I've seen in a long time. Austin, is there anything that you'd like to say before we do close this out?
No, just fantastic to have this opportunity. This season has been awesome. I can't remember a more exciting season, right? In terms of just from start to finish, every single race, it's been exciting. It's been awesome. So thankful we get to be a part of this, and thank you to everybody that follows along with us, YouTube, Twitch, even just behind the scenes. It's an army to get this thing done.
It absolutely is. And some of those people that are included here at this army that allow us to continue the Intercontinental GT World Challenge, of course, are Fanatec, AWS, Pirelli, Kunos, AK Esports UK, SimGrid, AMG Motorsports, and of course, Zynamic, providing the most amazing photography we've ever seen from any simulator ever. And there we can see the sun cresting onto the Nordschleife as we do conclude this stream tonight. I've been Mike Noss, Austin alongside me for tonight. I hope everybody has a lovely evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in this fine world. Thank you, and good night.